Hello, my fellow Westorians. It's another Sunday. It's another Valar Rereadis. This time brought to you by Sean's humming accompaniment of our very hummable theme song. I can't blame him. I mean, I was humming it too. It's a great song. Joey Townsend really nailed it right in that song.
You're really humble about how great of a song it is.
Hey, it's not like I wrote it. If I did, I'd be even less humble about it. So, yep, it is the conclusion of the Mystery Night. We have one episode here to wrap up the Mystery Night. Then we'll have another episode next week to wrap up all of Dunk and Egg. We'll discuss them as a whole. That's going to be fun. But let's see what today brings us, my fellow Westorians, and what are you imbibing on this Sunday, Sean? What is in your cup?
This is a mix I haven't done before. There's a pina colada naked drink that, of course, I mixed with Mountain Dew. I didn't add a third thing in there because I wasn't sure how this is going to go, but man, it's great. Everyone should do this. I'm telling you.
You should get that one caught out in the rain and make it a... I can't think of that dude's name. Who wrote that song? Rufus Pina Colada song?
No. No, that's an actor.
I don't know. I don't like...
Maybe, I guess. But...
I don't like pina coladas or getting caught in the rain or any of the stuff in that song. I kind of like yoga, but... but I don't have half a brain. I've only got about a third. But it's all focused on A Song of Ice and Fire.
Holmes.
Rupert Holmes. Okay. Yeah. Rupert Holmes, boy. And Sean, speaking of... not speaking of, but let's transitioning to... You've been doing some short videos on your Dancing Sean channel on YouTube, movies reviews, and you've got some new ones out just recently. So why don't you tell us about that real quick?
Yeah, I did sort of a sci-fi theme, mostly just because I got a Star Wars and a Contact poster.
You got a Contact
to have in a background.
Yeah.
Maybe Dune's coming out. I don't know. I want to get a variety of different movies done. I'm trying to do more sort of classic or well-known movies for people who haven't seen them, or maybe to give perspective for the way I'm doing reviews. You could watch reviews I've done of movies you've seen and then watch ones you haven't seen, have an idea of my format or tell me how well I'm doing at presenting the movies. And I said reviews, they're more like previews because I'm trying to do 1 minute long non-spoilers.
Yeah. Just
to give you an idea, what kind of
theme
the movie is, what kind of tone it has, not without talking about what happens in the plot,
And can you guys think about Sean on the podcast. Can you think of him getting something said in 1 minute?
I have to talk fast sometimes. It's hard to get all that information in 1 minute.
And he doesn't ever say, does that make sense? Well, maybe you do. I don't know.
I don't think I do. I don't think I have time for that.
You don't have time for that.
It's also not interactive. So
yeah, no, you're explaining. Yeah, and you do a good job. Yeah, I think it's very solid. And it's very timely. It's fun that you chose sci-fi fantasy. We're perhaps entering the biggest ever winter/autumn of sci-fi fantasy new shows and books that I've ever seen. I don't want to sit here and list them all, but man, it's impressive what's coming out.
I think you should do the David Lynch Dune, Sean, and then do the new Dune.
Compare the two.
Maybe I could. So far, I'm trying to do movies that I think of positively. Man, that original Dune, I can find some silver linings, I guess, but
it's entertaining, just not in the way it expected to be.
It meant to be, yeah.
I mean, some people really like it, so no shade to them. I'm not going to tell anyone else what to like, but yeah, I'm kind of with you. It is a little,
even people that like it have got to admit some of the awkwardness that's in there. Yeah.
It's got too much, say, the 80s in it, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, that's not what we're here.
It'll take me more than a minute to talk about.
Yeah, right. There's more than a minute's worth of things to say about that.
Yeah,
one.
I did do the Matrix. There's a new Matrix coming out. I did the original Matrix, and I did Aliens, which, by the way, if you didn't know, there's a Noah Hawley Aliens TV show in the works for FX. I think it's like more than a year away, but Noah Hawley, who did Fargo and Legion, and
actually don't think I knew that. Maybe I heard that, but that's really cool. That's got some potential for sure. I'm not a big alien guy, but the movies were pretty solid. So got a chance. I'll definitely check that out. Thanks to Nina for her invaluable assistance on preparing this episode. An example of a recent blog post over on Good Queen Alley with 1l.tumblr.com is a brief analysis of why Maegor the Cruel went with a septon marriage rather than trying to go another direction, given that he was trying to marry multiple people. If you want to join the discussion for, well, Dunk and Egg's wrapping up, but for future projects, future episodes, and other stuff that we've got going on, feel free to do so. You can join us over at Discord, on our Facebook group. You can talk to us on Twitter. You can talk to us through email. Lots of different ways to do that. Our Flick group is still kind of acting up. We'll keep updates on that, but I have been only able to connect to it about once out of every 10 attempts, which is pretty not great at all. Thanks to our patrons. You guys are doing wonderful work keeping the lights on over here, enabling us to put lots of effort into these projects, these episodes. With that in mind, after the wrap-up episode, we'll be taking a few months of focusing on our scripted content. Valar Rereadis will return in January for the World of Ice and Fire. That'll be a lot of fun. In the meantime, like I said, we'll have the occasional live stream and several scripted episodes. We have, you can join our social media to get more specific information on timing and schedule, or just keep your feeds open and you'll see the episodes when they pop. Keep it the simple way. Well, like I said, we'll be wrapping things up, but Sean, you have something you meant to bring up last time, so why don't we start with that?
Yeah, there was a little bit there, a little interaction between Dunk and Glendon Ball that I forgot to take note of.
Okay.
Glendon told Dunk, "My father was once promised a place amongst the Kingsguard. I mean to claim the white cloak that he never got to wear." And Dunk thinks, "You have just as much chance of wearing a white cloak as I do," Dunk almost said. We might have even brought this up, but I was just thinking...
We brought it up in a different way, not this particular quote. Yeah.
Strong foreshadowing that Ball probably will, at least possibly will, get on the Kingsguard.
Yeah.
And I thought, because at the end of here, one of those two Kingsguard that had a very positive interaction with Dunk and the Hedge Knight.
Yeah, Roland Craycall.
Craycall, and interacts with Dunk here again. Yeah. And I remember thinking, we talked about, how it was, I don't know if out of place is quite the right word, but, a pleasant, how positively those two Kingsguard interacted with Dunk and the Hedge Knight. Where,
good point, yeah.
It seemed like most people treated Dunk kind of as, suspiciously, and Dunk kind of didn't expect people to think much of him, but they instantly accepted him as a knight, made small. It would have been not surprising in any way if they're like, "Who are you? Get out of here. Don't talk to us."
That would be
but
normal.
Instead, they're like, "Hey, how's it going, sir?" So I wonder if they maybe had some connection to Hedge Knights, some appreciation of the common folk, that maybe Dunk and Glendon would also have as Kingsguards.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, the Craycalls are a pretty big house, so he's not a Hedge Knight. He couldn't have been a Hedge Knight. In fact, Jaime Lannister himself was a squire to, I think it was Ambrose Craycall. So that would be not Roland's descendant, obviously being a Kingsguard knight, but but his ancestor.
But maybe if he had squired to a Hedge Knight or had some interaction, some man at arms that had trained him well, who knows? But
it really is also a statement on this is a time when the Kingsguard were decent people. They were, the image, the picture of knightly courtesy.
Yeah,
that's a good call. But in addition to all that,
I just want to say real quick, Sean, I really appreciate your thought of Glendon in the Kingsguard.
Yeah,
Egg really, seemed to respect him after this, so I could see Egg doing that.
And that, by the way, increases the chances, at least the way I figure it, and I think a lot of y'all would agree, that he does continue to travel with them. He does go north with them or whatever. Like, Egg would need to get to know him a little better. I mean, maybe they just encounter him again one day. That would work, too. Yeah. He could just, he's a great jouster. The guy, maybe he's just going to become a famous tournament knight or something like that. Like, yep, he won another tournament. That's how they keep tabs on him or something like that.
So the title of the series could then be The Tales of Dunk, Ball, and Egg?
The eggs roll not quite as well as balls. We teach them how to be less oval.
Ball and Dunk get a little spin-off. Be a basketball series.
Spin-off. Oh no, a ball. That's terribly great.
Also,
so connected to this thought.
Just clarification. Jamie squired for Sumner.
Sumner
Craycall.
Craycall.
How
Yeah,
could
I said,
you
I was like,
forget
no,
such a
Ambrose
weird
is the
name,
current guy. Ambrose
Sumner.
Butterwell. Yeah, I'm like getting that name crossed. Sumner, that is cool. Yeah. Sumner is
So-
over. It's time for Wintner.
So, assuming that some of these speculations do come to fruition, if you push much farther forward, Glendon might perish in a ball of fire
Heyo.
along with Dunk and Egg.
Yeah, he might die at Summerhall too. That's true. Like our predictions from other episodes is that it seems like the whole Kingsguard was wiped out. After all, they picked a new Lord Commander and he was a young guy, so like he wasn't even in the Kingsguard before. So it seems like they had to start fresh. Like when you have a new guy and he's the new Lord Commander, they didn't promote from within. There may not have been a within to promote from. So yeah. Let's actually.
I just want to say, Nina had a thought on Donald, the
Okay.
other Kingsguard knight.
Sure.
That per George, Donald of Duskendale is not a Darkland, but it's unclear what his background is. So you could potentially say that he is clearly of a slightly lesser caste.
Yeah, that's a
potentially.
great
He's
point.
not a hedge knight per se, but he's not a great lord.
He's just of Duskendale, which means he doesn't have like a house name or anything like that, which that says a lot.
Oh, kitty meow.
So
Maybe he and Roland Craycall had a relationship similar to Dunk and Egg or Dunk and Ball.
maybe you never know.
Maybe he saw this kind of unnamed lowborn character do really well, and he had to rethink his opinions. And now he takes that to heart and treats Dunk with respect.
Someone who's had the same eye-opening experience that Egg is having by traveling around, outside of the social class he was born into.
By the way, you talk about them having a relationship. There is a theory that Donald and Roland Craycall were in a relationship.
Like lovers
like a
or
relationship,
whatever. Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah, it could be. Sticking with this topic a little farther, I was planning on talking about this at the end, but we may as well talk about it now. The end is so abrupt, right? There isn't any sort of send-off. There isn't any like, let's head out on the road again. And what that does is it means Dunk doesn't have a lot of time to think about what's just happened. He just reacts. And one of the things I find really interesting is it doesn't give, this might be intentional on George's part, because he's revealed, Dunk is told that an egg did hatch after all. He's like, Bloodraven says, it's not surprising that the occasional Blackfyre has dragon dreams or has dreams of the future. So he's admitting that Damon really did have prophetic dreams. Not that we didn't know that, but Dunk is told that, right? That's really important that it's verified. And it's proven because Bloodraven says, he just got the color of the egg wrong or whatever. An egg did hatch, he just got the wrong dragon or what have you, or the wrong color. So that, in a sense, does that not validate some of the other dreams Damon had, which includes the dream of Dunk being in the Kingsguard? Dunk, now we know that. We're not all here, oh my God, Dunk's going to join the Kingsguard. No, we of course know that's going to happen. But Dunk might have that realization. He might be like, holy crap, if that dream was true about the egg, then am I going to be in the Kingsguard? He may just never realize it. He may not put those two dots together. But that's one of the reasons I think the story ends abruptly. He doesn't have time. We're left wondering if that's going to occur to him or not. So I think that's pretty cool.
You've sparked several thoughts in me, a couple of which I also plan on talking about later, but a couple new ones.
Go for it.
I've already lost at least one of them. I was going to say that one, I had the thought that when Dunk does get onto the Kingsguard, will he reflect back to, wait a minute, that fiddler guy, he predicted this.
Yeah.
And he also said an egg was going to hatch. Maybe an egg will hatch. And that might even encourage him, especially if Damon is still around and he or Egg or whoever are talking to him about other dreams. If other dreams also, I could see the case building. It might not be so crazy for Egg to try to hatch a dragon egg. Does that make sense? I could see all these different things throughout their lives keep pushing him towards it,
Yeah, they're magic, proof of concept of these magical ideas. Like, well, if that was true, then if he starts having dreams or something like that, his brothers, Aemon said all his brothers dreamt of dragons. So, Egg's one of his brothers.
Now, by the way, the line when Bloodraven says that an egg did hatch, I took that to mean, I thought he was talking about Aegon. I thought that was Aegon was like, revealing
No,
himself
he was.
at the tournament.
He was talking
like,
about that.
yeah.
That's why he's saying he got the
Okay.
color wrong because it was a red.
Oh,
egg
red instead of black.
egg.
I see what
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
saying. Yeah. I thought you were saying. I thought that you were implying there might be an interpretation that Bloodraven has also had a prophetic dream of an egg hatching.
No, not that. No,
and
yeah.
but he knows it's not here. It's sometime in the future.
Mm.
And maybe he hasn't pieced it all together, but he just knew it wasn't here.
Huh. Well, you never. It's an interesting question of what Bloodraven knows at this point. Has he started having dreams about the others? Has he been contacted by the way Bran was contacted by him? It's really kind of, we don't know. We have really very little. All we have is guesswork there, and that's one of the things we get into in our Bloodraven focused episodes. So, a better place for that than here, where there's just bits and pieces rather than whole lots of him. So this is kind of good timing here. Just as Damon's real identity is revealed to Dunk, which we covered at the end of last time, the egg's theft is discovered, and the conspirators are scrambling to deal with it. And like, what do? The egg is gone, and it actually kind of works out pretty well for the jousting because it interrupts what's about to happen. And we have this quote from the accusation.
And suddenly, Lord Peak himself was storming across the muddy field to climb the steps to the herald's platform, his cloak flapping behind him. "We are betrayed!" he cried. "Bloodraven has a spy among us. The dragon's egg is stolen."
Actually, Bloodraven has several spies amongst you, and he himself is amongst you. But yeah, he did steal the dragon's egg. So why not just let it be that then? He's got to blame it on Glendon Ball, which is kind of odd to me. Partly they are trying to get rid of him because he's winning and they can't have him win. Yet that backfires so horribly because he ends up fighting the guy they don't want him to fight in a trial by combat. They're like, "Oh, don't fight Glendon Ball." Then he's like, "I will fight you in a trial." Like, oh, damn it.
Yeah, if they had been lucky, it would have backfired in some different way, which there was plenty of potential for. Like, if anyone wants to see the body of the dead guards, supposedly, like, there's so many things.
So why can't he's already said Bloodraven has a spy. I'm like, why not just, okay, the egg was stolen by Bloodraven? Like, you're already admitting the egg is stolen, but he's trying to, their play here is, oh, we're going to recover it or pretend we've recovered it so that to not, to be able to keep going. Because if they think the egg is entirely gone, well, that brings us to the next point. If the egg was stolen by Glendon, why is he still there? Why didn't he leave? Not only does he have the prize, there's nothing to win. It's like the thing to win is now not winnable because it's gone. So, yeah, it's fittingly from this batch of conspirators who have not exactly shown that they're very good at this. There's all sorts of holes in this rushed, ill-considered accusation. Like I said, Glendon's winning. He's been winning in sight of everyone. When could he have snuck off to do this? It's not very feasible. They claim he killed 2 men without making any noise. I mean, if someone had been like, where are the bodies? That would have...
Yeah. He doesn't have the motivation or the means, and there's no evidence. But it's a really good example of people hearing what they want to believe.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, everyone in the audience is already here to promote Damon.
Yeah.
And it doesn't like Glendon. So it's an easy, I don't know if that's the right word.
Scapegoating.
To swallow.
Yeah, scapegoating.
It's a scapegoat.
You're right.
But if in a movie we were witnessing, instead of just Dunk's POV, we were seeing more omniscient presentation, and we saw these conspirators coming up with this idea, it's like, no, like, don't do it.
Yeah,
like, how is that gonna, what are they thinking?
Yeah, it's really, it's both absurd, but also absurd in a very believable way. We've all seen like people just die on hills of arguments or believing things that are just absurd to believe. The evidence is completely against it. The counter evidence is really strong, but it's what they want to believe. Like you said, that's a big part of it. And also, once people dig their heels in, sometimes there's just no going back.
Yeah. Once there's enough momentum, right?
Momentum. Yeah, there's a lot of momentum. Like you said, this is the part of the plan that works or that gives it a chance to succeed. It's a bad accusation, but the power of everyone hates that guy is really strong. Everyone hates Glendon. They are like, he's made new enemies just by winning, right? Like he was hated when he arrived, and he's more hated now. So that's the part of this that's a little bit clever, but it's also very much just what a bully would do. So it's like the standard bully play. Pick the guy everyone hates and blame it on him. Perfect scapegoat. But it's also selfish and destructive because, again, like, this is a really talented knight. This guy's kicking butt at a time when they're in need of warriors who are good at kicking butt, and they're just like turning on him, like this guy who's all about the cause, who was, as he says, willing to die for him, and they're turning him into a scapegoat. It's a really
Damon himself has even tried to prop Glendon up, right?
He
And
knew.
you're like,
He understood. Yeah. It's really just kind of sad. And Dunk, another moment where he's actually kind of smart. He's insightful enough to realize, ooh, they could have made me the scapegoat. He's in a similar position. Like, people don't really like me, but Glendon was even more of a target. In fact, but Dunk might have worked better as a target because, well, if he had jousted, he might have lost his childlike combat. But they didn't see that coming. They did not see Damon being like, all right, we're going to joust to see who's guilty. Like, Peake did not see that coming at all. Like, no one predicted that. Like, frankly, I don't think many people would have. At least I don't fault Peake on. I fault him for so many other things, but yeah. But noticing that, Glendon has no friends and that everyone wants this Damon thing to work out, you're right. There's so many reasons for them to believe the lie, even if it's a pretty bad lie.
So, we're talking about the joust real quick. I wanted to ask a question. So, you know how someone laughs about the brown dragon?
Yeah.
Do you think Bloodraven had a plant there that yelled that?
Ooh, maybe.
Good call.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. He sees what they're doing. They're trying to make this guy famous, make it like draw out his charisma, get people
So
inspired.
you gotta undermine that.
Yeah, doing the opposite. Because it was really, like, that's really effective. People laughed their butts off. Like, I
was
laughed.
clever. They were quick on the draw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty smart.
Especially the deeper we get into this, the more likely it is for Bloodraven to have more agents in the vicinity. Does that make sense? Like, it might take a couple days to get thousands of soldiers amassed outside the city walls, but 2 or 3, sentries on horseback could get there pretty quick,
Yeah, that's true. It's funny.
Or people who are already in place. Bloodraven just has to give the
Or a
signal.
troop
All right,
of
amp it up a little.
Yeah, troop of
For
comic
example.
It's funny, too, to think about what we're doing here. With Bloodraven, we've seen how clever he is, how good he is, how smart he is. So we're just like theorizing on other ways he might have been so smart that people may not have noticed. Like, maybe that was him. Maybe that was him. Well, the other guys were just like, this other dumb thing they did. They clearly did this dumb thing because, like, well, you expect dumb things from people doing dumb things, and you expect smart. Obviously, it's not always quite so simple, but yep. Let's be aware of our patterns, and yep, they check out. Okay. Yeah, and the thing about what's funny about Dunk, he realizes, I don't have a lot of friends here. So that's why I could have made a good scapegoat. Though, as we'll see shortly, he does have one very, very important friend. Someone who says, who are you? A friend. That's coming up here shortly to help him when he helps him with his wound. And that wound he receives in the next scene. Now, Nina writes, it's funny that as Glendon is being falsely accused of stealing the dragon egg, so Alan is accusing Dunk of trying to steal the dragon, Damon himself, just as the accusation against Glendon is pretty ridiculous, given how easy an alibi he had, right? So is this accusation against Dunk pretty ridiculous. Dunk isn't even gay. Like, he's not, he's not trying to get with Damon. He was clearly like, no, I'm not interested. He's like, no, I'm uncomfortable. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, he's clearly not the instigator here at all. So Cockshaw is just killing him to get him out of the way, not because he's actually making an effort to steal Damon. So he's, being a little whiny about it. But
paranoid.
Yeah,
maybe.
a little paranoid about it. Now, it's sort of like Peake. It's smart. The one thing Peake did well in terms of accusing Glendon was picking a target that people wouldn't back up the lie. Like, people aren't going to question the lies about Glendon. It still backfired for other reasons, but people weren't like, well, why was he over here? And why would he steal the egg? Like, those, no one cared to ask those questions, even though those are good questions because of who the target was. But here, Cockshaw's one smart thing is he makes his move at the right time, right when everyone's distracted and Dunk is paying attention to this accusation. That was a pretty smart time for it. But everything after that is pretty dumb. he fits in well with these conspirators. He should have just stabbed Dunk, right? The moment they were out of the way. Like, this whole get in the well plan is pretty bad. Like, he's gonna fight back rather than just meekly die, right?
Yeah. I guess maybe Dunk might have gone through the process of like, I can jump in there without dying. Like, maybe I can make the fall and I won't drown. I can hold to the edge, and then Dunk will just be out of the way till they fix these other problems. And maybe, but even if somehow he thought, if he really thought through all that, right? It seems like he would have thought through some other stuff. And
I don't think he could have gotten out of that well.
Yeah, maybe not.
Like, even if
someone might have been able to throw a rope down and
my
save him
point
if he's
is
yelling
even
for
if
help
they threw
later.
A rope down, I feel like the rope could break. I feel like you have to have so many people to grab him. Like, how many men have to come?
Well, he said he can't swim too,
Yeah,
so he
like
would have.
the-
He might not have been able to stay
seems
afloat.
like he would die.
But on top of all that, he starts monologuing.
Yeah, he starts monologuing. Like, you've loved my. It's like he wants to justify why he's killing. He's like, see, I have a good reason to kill you. It's like, no, you don't.
And it's given Dunk the time to piece together a plan to find that loose rock, the stone or whatever.
To realize what to do. He's like, I guess I got to just try to take you unarmed versus knife here. And well, he's like, I turn around and I'll cut your kidney. He's like, well, you should have just done that.
Yeah,
you should have just cut his kidney, and then that would have been it.
And then you could have just rolled the body into the well.
Or just walked away, and people are like, damn, someone stabbed this guy. Like, oh, well.
Yeah, I guess people aren't going to care that much.
Yeah,
but if you're
like,
trying to hide your murder,
Yeah.
because, say, Damon, your lover, would care
Yeah,
about this.
as long as
perhaps you dump him in the well.
That's true. Yeah, he wouldn't be able to lift him, I guess, but you're right. It's like, still, anyway, the plan's terrible. That's the bottom line here. I think
it's another example of if this was a movie, you'd be like, no, what? Like it would be a classic scene when the guy's monologuing and Dunk's like getting a stone. It would be just like every other. It's
like the stone
movie.
is loosening slowly. I don't even think he needs the stone. Like, if he fails to bring the stone loose, like, he smashes him in the face with it. Like, he probably wouldn't his fist have probably been good enough there? Like, probably.
Yeah.
Like, he broke his arm with his hand, like, just snapped his wrist with his just bent it and broke it. So, like, he's really outclassing this guy in size and strength. And Dunk thinks a bit like, he's like, it's like Crocodile Dundee. Well, Crocodile Dunk D, actually. He says, he's like some little toy knife. It's very similar. It's like, that's not a knife. And a bit like, it's kind of like Sir Lucas Inchfield, right? He's facing down someone who's, he's unarmed, someone who hates him. He's wounded and unarmed, but he still, bashes him and drowns him. Although I'm not technically sure if Long Inch drowned or died from the stab wound first. It's not really important, though. Interesting, too. Another bit of just absurdity. Cockshaw's like, I'm going to be Damon's Lord Commander. Like, dude, you are not up to that task. Clearly, you can't even kill an unarmed man when you have a knife to its back. You start monologuing. Like, what are you going to do when the foes come to kill your king? Are you going to start monologuing at them? Oh, boy. But it does bring us to a fun parallel in the main series with Loras and Renly. Right, the natural, unsuspicious proximity of the King's Guard as a cover for a forbidden relationship, kind of like Jaime and Cersei. That part's a pretty good plan. Like, they have a lot of reason to be around each other without anyone being suspicious of it. So, the reason it worked for Renly and Loras is Loras really is amazing at fighting. Like, he's really awesome. But Cockshaw, no.
No one was questioning Loras being on the King's Guard in the first place.
Right. It was like, oh, yeah, that guy, absolutely.
Or Jaime.
Yeah.
Right.
But this guy would be like, what? What's he doing there?
By the way, another thought I had here, or maybe two thoughts, is it, one, just think about the parallels to Loras. Can Loras swim? I had that thought.
Yeah.
That might not matter, but I wonder if it'll matter to Dunk one day. It seems like I wonder if that's a little hint that was dropped for a future dilemma that Dunk might be in.
I just would say for Loras, I would be willing to guess he can swim because Highgarden has a river right near it.
Yeah, and then he was a squire in the Stormlands where there's lots of bodies of water.
I imagine if you're in the Stormlands, you learn how to swim.
No, how could he resist getting into a pool with Renly? Yeah. But honestly, and Damon was ignoring him. Like Damon wasn't that into Alan because that was part of the problem here. So even if he had killed Dunk, I don't know that Damon would have. That's like, oh, now I'm into you again. Yeah, that's not really how that works.
Moment's passed.
Yeah. So this part of the connection to like Loras and Renly doesn't really work. Maybe if Alan Coxar was actually a really good warrior, then Damon might just looked at him and like, oh, actually, you're pretty cool. But no, yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, actually, Loras and Dunk have a few things in common. We've talked about Brienne and Dunk a lot because there's a ton in common there. These two, yeah, they're both good looking. They're about the same age. Loras was briefly Lord Commander of the Rainbow Guard. Dunk will be eventually Lord Commander of the White Cloak. So some things. Some stuff there. Obviously, the orientation's different, but connection to the king long before he became king. That's another one as well. Although Renly wasn't exactly king very long, technically, we can say that.
Was he ever king at all?
I guess you could say no in a way. Like he crowned himself, but he never really he didn't seat the Iron Throne. So sit.
There's probably someone out there standing for Renly, but not me.
Yeah, if Rhaenyra isn't included in the history books, Renly definitely shouldn't be. Like, there's a lot of false kings that weren't included. Rhaenyra probably should have been, but Renly, if she's not, Renly definitely doesn't belong.
Rhaenyra definitely should have been. She did seat.
She literally sat. Yeah, she was literally crowned. Yeah, so that should be if that's the standard, then there's no question. But that's another topic. So sticking with Renly and Loras, we have Olenna's commentary, which was very similar. Gallant, yes, charming and very clean. He knew how to dress, and he knew how to smile, he knew how to bathe, and someone got the notion that this made him fit to be king. Bloodraven, Plummraven, says, you would be surprised to know how many lords prefer their kings brave and stupid. Yet Damon is young and dashing and looks good on a horse. Really similar comment, isn't it? Right? Like being able to rule from behind. You want them that way so you can like be a puppet ruler or get what you want from them, or yeah, you want a guy who's big and generous and charismatic because he's going to give you what you want. So
Dunk might qualify to be king once a month. He knows how to bathe once a month, right?
Good one. So, hey, he took 2 in 2 days at one point.
Yeah. I love how Egg was just aghast. He's like, you just bathed yesterday. Again?
You're a royal. You should understand multiple baths, but you're also like 12, so, I didn't want to take a bath when I was 12 either, so, yeah. So, another parallel here, kind of a fun one. The courtyard where Alan tries to murder Dunk. This is a good take by Nina here. Sort of reminds of the Moon Door. Well, it's the show's version of the Moon Door, where it's in the floor instead of the wall, because we have this well that they're trying to shove him into. And the reason it reminds of the Moon Door is because of Bloodraven with his moonstone emerges right at the end of the scene. And that really adds to that the symbolism or the concept, or just draws a fun parallel. I'm not sure there's like a big deep meaning to this connection. It's just kind of fun. So let's have the next quote. The friend arrives just in time to help with the bleeding wound and other things.
Through the rain, all he could make out was a hooded shape and a single pale white eye. It was only when the man came forward that the shadowed face beneath the cowl took on the familiar features of Sir Maynard Plumm, the pale eye no more than the moonstone brooch that pinned his cloak at the shoulder.
As Melisandre and others use rubies, here we have a moonstone used as a symbol and maybe a locus, focus, same, both, maybe, of power, like a... We've seen gemstones used kind of that way in lots of fantasy types, but usually it seems to be rubies. But a ruby would probably work well, given that his one eye is red. It would it would fit pretty nicely that way, but it would also really give it away.
Yeah, too good of a clue there.
And it would be really out of place for a hedge knight to have a ruby, right? Like John the Fiddler having amethysts. it would look like that. But
by the way, that moment, I can't help but think how well that could be portrayed on film or through animation. That sort of blurred vision, kind of sort of seeing Bloodraven, but then clarifying into Maynard Plumm, and the audience trying to piece together what they just saw in the same way Dunk is. When is someone going to make this into a TV show?
That's a really good. That's a good said, Sean. You have a cinematic eye for these things, for imagining what it would look like on screen. I definitely agree with that. No wonder you're such a movie guy. Good take, very good. And really, the moon has been used in a lot of brand chapters as a symbol for a variety of related things, like being watched over by Bloodraven. The moon is maybe less a symbol of Bloodraven directly and more a symbol of the old gods, and Bloodraven is their representative in terms of Bran and to a lot of us. So 6 of dozen of one, half a dozen of the other, similar. Because after all, a lot of it is indirect. Like the direwolves howl and sing at the moon several times, for example. And Arya and Jon both have like wolf dreams where the moon is pretty prominent, kind of looking down on them, things like that. So you don't have to interpret symbolism that way, but there's also direct clues. But this is less about old gods magic, this next clue, and more about the magic of light and illusion. Maybe the Relore stuff. Not really sure if you want to what the origin is, but it's definitely different than the old gods. Here's the quote.
This close, there was something queer about the cast of Sir Maynard's features. The longer Dunk looked, the less he seemed to see. I did urge you to flee, you will recall, but you esteemed your honor more than your life. An honorable death is well and good, but if the life at stake is not your own, what then?
That's a really big quote, so let's break that down. First of all, it shows us how Bloodraven is a product and representative of not just ice and fire, from a family perspective, from a magical, supernatural perspective. Glamours and repping the old gods. There's really nothing else like him. Even Jon, who has ice and fire heritage, doesn't have any direct association with glamours or any kind of the overt fireside magic. Really, all he really has is dreams and skin changing, right? Which is a lot, but he's not out here casting spells. He's not even fully aware of his capacity, as Varamir put in his chapter. And of course, that's still old god side anyway, skin changing. This is also any comment on that, Sean?
Nothing particular.
Cool. But more perhaps importantly, this is really similar to what Varys says to Ned down in the dungeon about, well, you esteemed your honor more than your life, but what if it's Sansa? What if it's your daughter? And he's like, oh, well, then I'll say whatever I need to say to save her, right? And that's the same thing here, because this is a conversation that's transitioning or segueing to what's happened to Egg.
This thought process reminds me a little bit, because I really like that concept also, the realization that however brave or honorable you are, sometimes someone else is at stake. And a little bit of a tangent, but that's sort of the Superman dilemma. Like, nothing could beat Superman, but what if Superman has to save someone else?
Yeah,
or
Lois Lane is
2 people in 2 different places or whatever.
Yeah, she can't be.
Yeah,
she's invulnerable like him. Yeah,
that's his vulnerability, if you will, is his concern for others.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, and Dunk's a bit of a Superman.
yeah. And sometimes you'll see that thread in a plot or a character that, like, they don't want to care about someone else. Like the Night's Watch, you're not supposed to have family or kids or a state. You're just committed to this one group, this one mission. That's a weakness that Dunk has that gets taken advantage of here.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely, very true. And and just the same thing, we see it play out right away. He would not reclaim his arms and armor through any sort of shady means. But when it comes to saving Egg, he just goes in there and says, I'll kill you if you don't give me my stuff. And now he says this knowing that he's not going to have to do that. He's not going to have to kill this squire, because there's no way the squire is going to, stand up to him. It's an empty...
But if Uthor had been there...
Yeah, it would have been...
He would have...
Who knows?
Fought him better with his sword than with his lance, right?
Uthor would have made him promise. Uthor probably would have figured out a way to leverage the situation in a way that didn't turn into violence, but maybe not. But Dunk would have been willing to... It's the same point, though. Dunk was willing to toss his honor aside lightly, whereas before he was clinging tight to it because it was Egg's life, not his, and that's part of his honor too. Like he swore to protect Egg above pretty much all else. So it is consistent. So with Jaime, it would be like, so many vows you swear. I don't know which one. It's like, no, the vow to Egg is clearly the important one.
The more I think about it, that is a sort of a wisdom that Dunk has even over Ned. Like, it did take Bloodraven coming to Dunk, but Dunk didn't even realize Egg was in trouble at this point.
Right. He didn't.
When Bloodraven makes his point. And so we saw in the past too, Dunk took the blame for attacking that peasant.
Yes.
It wasn't Bennis, it was me. Look, there, cut my cheek, now we're even. Like, he's willing to sacrifice his honor for the sake of the right thing or peace overall. Ned had to get put in prison, you know what I mean? It took a lot more for Ned to realize he needed to make this sacrifice to save his daughter.
Yeah, he didn't see it coming as much. Maybe he should have, but...
So, I think about your argument about Dunk being knighted. That's him sacrificing his honor for what's greater, the greater good, which is him being a knight.
That's true.
Yeah,
he's shown that he's willing to do that for... anyways, I think you're pretty well convinced at this point, aren't you?
I'm reluctantly convinced, not pretty well convinced. I still want to get in George's brain or ask him a question or something, but it is also worth noting that, let's say that Dunk was maybe on the selfish side when he first told the lie and became a knight. It's been a couple years. I definitely grew a lot between 18ish and 22ish. So
I'm going to guess you probably grew a lot as well between 34 and 36, between 26 and 29. Only those ages, though.
Yeah, only those ages. You were frozen in stasis the rest of the time. So, part of the reason I think Bloodraven's being cagey about Egg is that he's like, okay, I know this guy's going to rush off and save Egg. I've got him pegged. I've got his personality pegged. That's something Bloodraven, Varys, these master whispers guys, they're experts at knowing how the chess pieces on the board are going to behave when you give them certain stimulus. And Dunk is not a complicated man like Ned, like very predictable in certain ways, in good ways. Obviously, this is not I'm not insulting them or criticizing them, but they are somewhat predictable, right? And Bloodraven knows this, so he's like, I gotta at least wrap this dude's arm up before I tell him what's happening, so he doesn't run off and faint. Like he's so gung ho. We need to slow it down just for a minute. Is that how you interpreted that too? Because I'm not super confident in this interpretation, but I think that's all I've got. Really, maybe it's a conclusion for lack of other conclusions. What do you think?
That makes sense. He maybe did a combination of, maybe he wants to lead Dunk in the right direction, but not tell him exactly what to do, but also make sure Dunk is ready to go in that direction.
Yeah.
And on some level, I still wonder if Bloodraven had completely made up his mind about Dunk. And I partly say that because at the end, it seemed like when everything's revealed, and he's in there talking to Dunk and Bloodraven and Egg, and he's passing judgment, it seems like he's still making sure Dunk answers questions the right way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We could talk about that maybe more when we get to the end.
Sure,
but
yeah, we'll do that.
I wonder that Bloodraven is ever truly trusting of anyone.
Good point.
Yeah. He may be more trusting of Dunk than most because he's seen him in action, seen how he behaves when it really comes down to it. There's nothing like that kind of proof, but people can change too, as he's seen in his own life. Like for example, he was trained at arms by Fireball, who became his big enemy, and he was probably idolized Damon Blackfyre, whom he had to kill. So yeah, this is a guy. He's pretty cynical in part because of the things he's had to do in his life. Or did in his life. Maybe he didn't have to do them, but he felt like he had to do them. Whether he had to or not, he did them, and they have to weigh on him a bit. So, Now, let's have the next quote. This is when Bloodraven and Dunk are talking. They're in the tent. He's sewing up his arm, or binding up his arm, and the subject of Egg comes up. And here we go.
This is where Dunk is asking Bloodraven where Egg is.
Yeah.
And Bloodraven says, "With the gods, and you will know why, I think." The pain that twisted inside Dunk just then made him forget his arm. He groaned. He tried to use the boat. So I surmise he showed the ring to Master Lothar, who delivered him to Butterwell, who no doubt pissed his breeches at the sight of it and started wondering if he had chosen the wrong side and how much Bloodraven knows of this conspiracy. The answer to that last is quite a lot, Plumm chuckled.
So this is right after he says the fiddler is Damon II when they're talking about, looking stupid on looking handsome on a horse, looking stupid on a horse. No, that's the Lord, not Cockshaw, but Caswell, the one who can't even hold his lance straight. Yeah. So this is interesting too. You and Nina both noticed this. I didn't take much note of this, but I think it's an interesting catch. That first of all, there's Dunk's nice silken tunic is cut up to bind Dunk's arm, and Dunk winces a little bit at the loss of his finest garment, which Plumraven doesn't even seem to consider. Which might be, you might not cut up a hedge knight's finest garment if you yourself were a hedge knight. You might not just do that so casually, but also maybe there's a little symbolism. Maybe. What do you think, Sean? Yeah, you guys, good catch here.
Yeah, my thought on it was a little bit more not the niceness of the tunic, but that it was from Dorne. Don't know for sure if Bloodraven would have even known that necessarily, but one with the other, I thought it might be symbolic or foreshadowing of something to come if Bloodraven is willing to tear up some Dornish connection to save a Targaryen or the Targaryen throne, or something along that. I could see a lot of ways. I even thought for a minute, I didn't get too deep with it, but I think he even tore it into 3 pieces, and he used the first piece to clean the wound. I was like, I'm probably reading too much into this, but I maybe not reading enough into it, because Martin does seem to choose his words carefully and did seem to take a minute describing this whole scenario. So
absolutely, yeah, and we have to remember that Egg's mother was from Dorne. And
right.
The Dornish relations with, Baelor was Dornish, and his death was a big deal, for the Dornish connection to the Iron Throne and all that. So yeah, there's definitely some possibility there. Y'all, if you have any more takes on that, hit us up, put it in the chat, send us an email or post it on the Discord or whatever.
Another thought I wanted to make about this scene was I appreciate that Dunk just is sick to his stomach, because he thinks right now
he realized it was
that
his fault.
Egg is dead.
Yeah.
And he's just ready to be done with life. Definitely doesn't care about his tunic. You know what I mean? He doesn't care about his arm. He's just worried. He just feels bad. Probably a combination of like, if Egg is dead, like that's sad on its own, but he also feels responsible for it too. And
this guy's telling him, I did tell you to leave. He's like telling him, you really should have. You had all the chance to not have this happen, So he's feeling like not just that he failed, but that it would have been really easy to not fail. It was just a bad choice, just a simple, dumb decision. And that is hard, to swallow, yeah.
Bloodraven seems to be letting this happen too. You know what I mean? He knows Dunk's feeling bad. He's not giving him a straight answer.
Yeah.
Eventually, Dunk grabs him by the neck, like, tell me what you're saying here.
Yeah. And you wonder too if he's just like maybe trying to delay, because he's like, my army's going to be here in like 10 hours. We just need to just hold off.
Yeah. Maybe he's trying to build the emotion up in Dunk. Maybe he's trying to make sure Dunk will go on this what might even be a suicide mission.
Yeah.
He's trying to get Dunk's courage or adrenaline up.
That's very interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities here. Speaking of the symbolism of cutting up, you have something?
Quick, I just wanted to bring up, we were talking about Bloodraven, talking about you should go to the wall or go here or go there. I wonder if Bloodraven has had any visions of them being important in any of these places.
Yeah.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
That's sort of why I brought up we don't know how deep he is into his magic at this point, but yeah, he definitely could, yeah. Wow.
It may add to why he was keeping tabs on this particular tournament, if he had a vision about it.
Yeah, you think maybe it was his spy network revealed it, but maybe it was just his magic revealed it to him. I mean, it could be both, but...
like, he might be wise enough, unlike a lot of other people with visions, to properly investigate. Does that make sense?
Yes.
He sends spies out, goes and collects data. He tries to figure out what these visions mean, rather than make these huge speculations. I guess I'm supposed to be king.
Yeah.
I guess I'm supposed to burn myself up in a fire.
Yeah, combining the two. Use the two
as
bounce them off each other. Let them work in concert rather than just believe everything. Yeah, use some verification. Use some hardcore logic as well as the idealistic dreaming. Somewhere in between. Yeah, or both. Yeah, both tools. That makes a lot of sense, right? One thing I looked for and I could not find was any evidence of was trying to find if Bloodraven's a skin changer already by this point. There's no like ravens or crows besides the ones at the crow cage at the beginning, which is not relevant to the tournament. So yeah, there's no animals like present that I would be like, oh, that's Bloodraven, because well, he's there in person. I guess he doesn't need to use animals, but still, it would have been noteworthy if there was one. It's not noteworthy that there isn't, but it definitely would have been. It would have been like, oh, he's definitely already using powers of the old gods. Which
Yeah, like I wonder if he had dragon dreams or green dreams,
Yeah,
or
it's
you know,
fascinating.
one or both.
tantalizing possibilities, really. Yeah, but
It's also possible the absence of crows or such are Martin, just like he didn't use a ruby when maybe he could have, but that's too strong of a clue.
Yeah,
Maybe he's
yeah.
trying to.
Good point. Speaking of symbolism, Nina noted here when Dunk does arrive at the Sept after getting his sword and stuff back, Egg steps out from the shadows beneath the father. That's kind of cool, right? He's in the shadow of his father. Of course, this is the father, meaning the seven of the faith. But it's Maekar knew about this. Like, remember the story that's told here, the lie that Egg goes and he's like, yeah, Maekar knew about this and sent me to investigate, which is a ballsy lie. It surprisingly worked, but Butterwell is such a coward and so afraid that it, he can't. He's already worried. I mean, the whole thing was falling apart even without that. Even if that wasn't true, everything was going really badly. So,
Yeah.
But also, Maekar is just a commanding, like Stannis, like figure of like he's a domineering, powerful war hero that with a aggressive personality. So that's the kind of guy that would cast a long shadow. That's very, very good catch.
Yes, I agree. I'm jealous of that catch. That's so good.
I didn't notice it either. Yeah, good catch, Nina. Good said. Well, point. So Butterwell's like acting like a guy who wishes he could take it all back, right? He's like, no, I didn't. It was his fault. Black Tom made me do this, and Gorman Peak arranged it all, and blah blah blah. And finding out that Egg is a prince just has him all the more motivated to get, to back out as much as possible, while Black Tom is like, nope, all the more reason to push ahead, all the more reason to take this prisoner and make demands. And yeah,
I kind of don't believe Butterwell, but I kind of do, which is that I do think he was kind of, the pressure was put on him and he had his ambitions, but that he was still just being pushed around. He wouldn't have done anything to do with this without anyone else.
It would have had to go really well.
Would you say that you believe maybe 1 in 10 of his words?
Nice. Good said. So he confesses, though. He does admit, even though he downplays his role, he doesn't say, he definitely admits he was part of it. And he places his hand on the altar and he's like, I swear, it's. So let's back up a little bit to the first time we see Black Tom, because he's about to fight him. There's a little bit of a foreshadowing. Whenever you see, when Dunk is the biggest guy, and whenever you see like the second biggest guy, maybe one of these days it'll be someone even bigger than him, there's a good chance he's going to end up fighting him. Even in the Hedge Knight, he doesn't end up fighting the biggest other guy there in the Laughing Storm, but he's going to, 20 years from now or something like that. So,
and he does fight the second biggest guy in the Sworn Sword,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. So this was somewhat predictable that he would eventually fight Black Tom. Let's have the quote for his first sight of him.
Dunk got his first look at Sir Tom Heddle while searching for Egg amongst the crowds about the lists. Heavy set and broad with a chest like a barrel, Lord Butterwell's good son wore black plate over boiled leather and an ornate helm fashioned in the likeness of some demon, scaled and slavering. His horse was 3 hands taller than Thunder and 2 stone heavier, monster of a beast, armored in a coat of ringmail. Yeah,
that's pretty intimidating. That's another thing that would look really cinematic, wouldn't it? Like this
oh yeah.
Wow. And then even more so when he takes his helm off, he's got his big black beard and angry red boils, just to throw another Blackfyre reference in there, black and red,
It's a strong horse.
Yeah.
It's a coat of ringmail and Tom Heddle.
Dragon horse. Yeah, demon helm with the horns. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, yeah. One other.
Can you just imagine the trailer? Right? Can you just imagine how exciting the 30-second commercial would be?
it kind of reminds me. This is not that deep of a cut, really. Kind of reminds me of the guy.
Quick, I just want to clarify. You meant not a horse trailer, but a trailer for a show.
Right, yes.
I've very much pictured an actual horse trailer from modern day.
Oh, for that. Oh, yeah. What size of a trailer could you fit that horse in? Yeah, that's great.
It's a good thing I clarified and said commercial.
You know the guy from Willow, General. Oh, the guy with the sawtoothed sword. He had that big old helm. That's who I picture when I think of this guy. General.
I vaguely remember. It's been a
General
long time since
Kale?
I've seen
Kale, General Kale. Yeah,
Mhm.
because he tastes like leafy vegetables. That's
it.
that's why he's like, oh, Kale. Ugh. Yeah, that's why he chose that name. So
Hey, don't badmouth kale. I like kale, and it's super healthy.
I like kale too, but only when it's heavily cooked. You gotta mix it with stuff. I like what it does for my nutritional needs more than what it does for my taste buds, though. Now, on the topic of demons and armor, there's one other sort of example of this, and it comes from when Tyrion is telling all the armorers and craftsmen of King's Landing that stop what you're doing and make chains. And they're not so happy about that. Master Solorian here is like, I've got an idea. Some of them argue, but Master Solorian, he's kind of like, he's more of a diplomat about it. It doesn't work. And his attempt at diplomacy is actually kind of bad, as you'll see from Tyrion's inner monologue. Here we go.
Plate and scale, I think. The scale is gilded bright as the sun, the plate enameled a deep Lannister crimson. I would suggest a demon's head for a helm, crowned with tall golden horns. When you ride into battle, men will shrink away in fear. A demon's head? Tyrion thought ruefully. Now what does that say of me?
Why would you go to a Lannister and be like, demon's head? Like, why not lion?
Yeah.
Like, that's so obvious. It's like demon's head. Yeah, what does it say of me? It's like, exactly. It says this is what he thinks of you. It's like, you're a scary looking man, so let's keep that going. Yeah, like, no, this was not a good sales pitch after all. Of course, Master Solorian's one of the guys who joins the Antler Men and gets flung over the walls with antlers nailed to his head by Joffrey. So this guy makes several bad decisions, actually. But it's the thing. It's like the point is a demon's helm is kind of a straightforward authorial trick. Even it's not even really a trick. It's just a statement. It's like, this guy is evil. This guy's bad news, right? It's not subtle. It's not meant to be subtle. Black Tom is a piece of work. He's scummy, brutal, cruel. He's worse than Long Inch and probably more open with his violence. And so quite a statement. This is probably not Nina writes this. We talked a little bit about this before. If y'all remember the Heddles, the Heddles appear also. Speaking of Tyrion, it's Masha Heddle that is overseeing the inn where Tyrion is arrested by Catelyn, and of course she gets hanged by Tywin because it was her place this happened in, as if she had a way to stop it. Anyway, that's another story. So there was some Sir John Heddle who bought the inn at the crossroads, and remember, this is the clanking dragon story come again. So the Heddles all tied into that. Now, so it makes sense that Black Tom would be on the Blackfyre side in that sense. His descendant, Masha Heddle, of course, was trying not to take sides at all. She's like, I don't want any of this. No, but, didn't work out for her. So we have a refrain that we pointed out before, and it comes up in this quote. A couple of refrains that happen in this battle. So let's have a quote and then we'll break it down.
Get him, sir, he heard Egg call. Get him! Get him! He's right there! The taste of blood was in Dunk's mouth, and worse, his wound had opened once again. A wave of dizziness washed over him. Black Tom's blade was turning the long kite shield to splinters. Oak and iron guard me well, or else I'm dead and doomed to hell, Dunk thought, before he remembered that this shield was made of pine. When his back came up hard against an altar, he stumbled to one knee and realized he had no more ground left to give.
Humor instead of tension is a storytelling technique, I think is the right way to go about it when you know who's going to win. Like, there's no tension as far as Dunk's life here. Maybe something surprising could happen here. Maybe, something unexpected could happen. But Dunk's not going to die in this moment, and everyone knows it, right? He's the POV. There's only one POV. So, like, as far as storytelling, it can be a little tedious when there's an extended fight between people when you really know what's going to happen, even if it's your first time seeing it. And that just gets worse on rewatch when you really, really, really know what's going to happen. So I know that's something we've talked about before, Sean, something you have thoughts on, like how to handle action scenes when you kind of know what the end result's going to be. And I think humor is a good way to do it, but there's other methods as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Humor is one way to do it. Another way to do it is to have something at stake beyond winning or losing or living or dying.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
He might still get his arm chopped off, or we might still relate to the pain that he's going through, or maybe Egg might still be in danger. Like, what if in the middle of this battle, one of the other guards grabs Egg? I think there's other ways for this to matter.
Absolutely.
Another thing is to make it be quick. Don't drag this out. Don't make this a 15-minute, action sequence that you got to suffer through.
And that is definitely what happened. This was like 3 paragraphs at most.
Yeah.
This is just like Black Tom drives him one way, then Dunk shield bashes him the other way and cuts his arm off, stabs him to the throat. Done. Yeah. Pretty good. I like that. And and also another good technique George uses here is this beating Black Tom isn't the climax. This is it's a step towards the climax. The climax is arguably the trial. Damon falling in the mud. That might be the real climactic moment, if anything is. I'm not sure there is one climactic moment, but that's more climactic than this, right? Because that's a real.
Part of why I like this story
Yeah.
is there are multiple heights, multiple climactic moments.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Also, his back going up against the altar sort of mirrors his back going up against the well when he's fighting fighting Alan Cockshaw, and the same thing happens. He's backed up against the wall. He starts smashing.
Yeah.
Just start bashing. You can't win with your sword. Just bash. Well, he didn't even have a sword against Cockshaw, but yeah, just bash. Do it.
It might also
Like the
add a
Bash
little
Brothers.
bit.
Yeah, the Bash Brothers.
It might add a little bit to Dunk's, I don't know how to say this exactly, but honor. Like, the only time he kills people is when he's really desperate, when there are obvious aggressors trying to kill him and he's fighting his way back out of it. He arguably could have killed some of these people quicker and faster when their guard was down or before it was clear that they were out to kill Dunk. But the moment he kills them is after they've all but killed him. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. Good said.
I never get tired of reading Egg go, get him!
Yeah,
Get
he's
him,
right
sir!
there.
He's right there!
That's so
I
awesome.
just have such a clear image of Egg's fist pumping at him.
Sean does a pretty good Egg too. You do a pretty good Egg voice.
Thank you. By the way, I say that without realizing. I realize it now because Rita points it out. But I say that when I'm playing with the cats with the toy.
It's right there.
And, it's like, yeah, it's right there. Get it.
Nice. That's great. And like you said about experiencing the POV's pain, he's certainly feeling that here as Tom is slamming his short sword into his shield, and the arm that's been stabbed by Cockshaw is really throbbing. But there's this sort of tongue-in-cheek line here.
You were no knight, said Black Tom. Those tears in your eyes, oaf. Tears of pain. Dunk pushed up off his knee and slammed shield first into his foe.
You are no knight, said Black Tom. Maybe that's what made him mad. He's like, oh, you shouldn't have made me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Dunk becomes Hulk. Yeah.
He struck a chord.
He did, yeah. So that was pretty neat.
By the way, another great opportunity for acting if this was filmed. That moment of tears in Dunk's eyes.
Yeah.
I don't know who they could get to play that well enough.
Nice, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, that would be like, this is a brief fight, but it would really need to be tight. Yeah. I'm a poet and I didn't recognize it prior to this moment. So since it's oak and iron, guard me well, or else I'm doomed to hell, and this is pine, well, we had to come up with some of our own rhymes. Pine guard my body, although it's more shoddy. Pine stop his blows, or he'll chop off my nose. That's more for Tyrion. Although Tyrion, it's too late for Tyrion, actually. It's for anyone but Tyrion, actually. Pine's what I'm rocking, your sword's what I'm blocking. With pine in oak's place, smash Black Tom in his face. And pine keep you in check till I stab through your neck.
Man, I wish somehow Martin could read. Somehow someone get Martin to watch this episode. You know he'd love that.
Yeah, he would. He would. At least I hope he would. It would be gratifying if he did.
Send us in your pine quotes.
Yes, your wood rhymes.
Your pine rhymes.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be for pine. You could go with mahogany.
That's hard to rhyme. Mahogany. Extra points if you can rhyme mahogany.
Mahogany.
With my mahogany, I am blocking thee.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't be hogging me, mahogany. So, yes, please do. If you have your own funny quips, send them our way. Speaking of jokes, Black Tom jokes that the only way Dunk would kill him is if he fell on him. This is not a good joke to make, Tom, considering every time we've seen Dunk win, including how he'll win against Black Tom, is when he uses size to beat people down. That was a good catch by Nina. Also, she says this joke recalls in reverse Darren the Drunken's prediction. Remember, he predicted that that he would fall on him, right? And Dunk would have a dragon fall on top of him, rather, and but emerge unscathed. And that's exactly what happened. But at Ashford Meadow, but here Dunk falls on the Black Dragon supporter, somewhat in reverse, instead of being fallen on by a red dragon. Pretty cool, yes. So let's take a few quick questions and comments, and then we'll get back to the narrative. Yassine says, destroying the fledgling legend with the power of hilarity. That's why Tywin Lannister hated the sound of laughter so much. That's a good take. Yes, Tywin did hate laughter. Does have a lot of power to detract from the type of image that Tywin likes to cultivate. That's a good take, Yassine. Dornish Dame says, this also makes me think of Mance and the silk thread patching up his cloak and how he valued it, but the Night's Watch wanted him to get rid of it. Yeah, really good point about the cutting up the cloak for binding, because that is why Mance's cloak was torn up, was because the lady who saved him after he'd been attacked by a shadow cat cut up more of his cloak and then repaired his cloak with the silk that she had. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Nina notes that when Dunk is thinking about where else to go, like Bloodraven's like, well, get out of here. He's like, well, where would I go? Doesn't consider going back to Coldmoat, even though he's had sex dreams about her. And she was clearly happy to have him around. He just, I don't know, maybe he just thinks that's moving backwards. What do you think about that? You think maybe he just didn't consider it? Or is it just, coming back with his hat in his hand? It is a little embarrassing for him? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that might be part of it, but also part of it might be hard to, I mean, at one point it even happens in his mind. It's hard to be around someone that you're romantically crushing on when they're with their significant other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
He's just torturing himself, right? To go back to her and she's with Eustace. It's hard to.
He thinks about it. What's Rohan doing? Is she slumbering besides Eustace snoring? He's thinking about the fact that they're together. Yeah, for sure. I don't think he would ever want to be with her while she's with another person.
Yeah, I guess it's so unthinkable that he doesn't think of it. Maybe that's why he doesn't even consider it. He's already considered it.
He's like, this would be wildly inappropriate. Even if he wasn't uncomfortable, it would not be appropriate for him to go be around her.
And we have to think. Remember, it hasn't been very long. We pointed that out at the beginning. This is unlike the first story where a year and a half or so has passed. This is like just months later. Another little neat catch here. Note that Bloodraven refers to the White Walls tournament as a nest of adders. And then at the end of the story, Bloodraven will also use the phrase nest of adders, which by itself, maybe that doesn't mean a lot, but the phrase nest of adders appears 3 times total in all of the books, period, all of them. And 2 of those 3 times are Bloodraven, then Maynard, or other way around. Really the same guy twice. So here is the only other time it appears.
Catelyn looked to her husband. Now we truly have no choice. You must be Robert's hand. You must go south with him and learn the truth. She saw at once that Ned had reached a very different conclusion.
The only truths I know are here. The south is a nest of adders. I would do better to avoid.
Yeah, guess so, Ned. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Yeah. He's not wrong, though, right? he would do better to avoid it. Yeah. So yeah, we've seen more trials by combat of various types than we've seen the phrase nest of adders. So that is pretty noteworthy. How it comes up there. Oh, we've already got a submission for the rhymes. A couple submissions. Looks like as I was saying, there's one. Another one has popped up. Guinevere Greenstone says, "Pine's not oak, but please save this fine bloke." That's pretty good. Aaron Halley says, "Now, my love, let's consummate our monogamy on the mahogany, for which we'll later dine supine on a table of pine."
Whoa.
Very good. He only had about 5 minutes to compose that. Well done, y'all. Well done. That was really good. Okay, so the trial itself, like I said a minute ago, arguably the true climax here. We don't have to actually debate whether it is or not. It's just, we'll just leave it as that it's arguable that it could be. And here comes apparently your second favorite line in all of Dunk and Egg.
Yeah, my first favorite I've mentioned a couple times is in the Hedge Knight when Baelor says, "The gods will let us know."
Yeah.
And my second favorite is here when Dunk, bold as he can be, says, having stood up and commanded the attention of the hall and the prince, who asks him, "What do you want, Dunk?" He says, "Justice for Glendon Ball." Oh, man, I well up
really
at that
good.
moment.
It reminds me a little bit of Doran Martell at the end of Ariane's chapter where he reveals their plan, the secret plan that he's kept from her for so long. He says, "Vengeance, justice, fire and blood." You know, he's not announcing it to everyone in the hall, but he's announcing it to the reader and to Ariane, who is stunned.
Yeah.
And that's not a reveal, not a secret. This isn't a secret being revealed, but it does have that sort of gravitas, right?
Yes, yeah. And this moment also reminds me of another moment from the Hedge Knight. I think about this. It's like, I don't know, I don't know how to say this, like, especially on a reread, especially when we're trying to cover this, right? Yeah. I have certain thoughts, certain things I'm looking for, right? Certain ways my mind is steered to interpret the story. And one of which comes from this quote from the first one when Dunk is thinking about Egg. He says, "The boy is too bold for his own good. Ought to beat that out of him." He knew he would not, though. He liked the boldness. He needed to be bolder himself. My squire is braver than I am and more clever. And to the whole story, I just keep noticing how bold and clever Dunk is. You know, like, just Dunk doesn't give himself enough credit. And this is like one of the boldest moments of the whole story when he stands up there and demands justice in a room full of adders, in a nest of adders.
That's cool. You're right. That's a really good line to cite. And then there's your response here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's sort of a follow up as the fallout of this demand, this commotion that Dunk has created here. "Enough!" Lord Peake's face was almost purple. "One more word and I will rip your tongue out by the roots."
"You lie."
Sorry.
"You lie," said Dunk. "That's 2 words."
Yeah, that was so perfect. And that one, not only is that bold and also kind of clever, but I also feel like that's a little bit Dunk channeling Egg. That's maybe specifically kind of snarky like Egg is,
That's true. Yeah, it's like that sarcasm, like comeback, like, it's a little bit snotty, but it's also like right on, yeah. And it is this whole scene is kind of tragic because Damon does kind of shine in this scene, not after he's all muddy. That mud does take the shine off. But I mean, how he takes justice seriously. Like, that's definitely to his credit that he wanted to get to the bottom of it. He didn't just brush it all under the rug. It would have maybe been more pragmatic for him, but he kind of wanted to do it the right way, even though he's kind of naive about what the right way is. He's very naive about what's happening around him, And it's also an irony because the conspirators tricked him into thinking he was a better jouster than he was. He thinks he's going to be like, he acts as his own champion, which isn't required of him at all. Using a champion is entirely normal, right? Like, the kings have Kingsguard fight for them all the time. It's like more normal than not. So, yeah.
Though in this example, he kind of has to do it, right? Like, imagine if this moment he calls for a champion to joust for him.
Yeah.
That just really takes away from the whole.
That's true. You're right.
Attempt at leadership that he's going for here, and that he needs to be going for here.
The specific person he is trying to emulate and show himself to be descended from would not have taken a champion. Never.
Yeah, Damon Blackfyre would have done it himself. You're right. And that's what he's trying to emulate. So that's a very good point. but he wouldn't have thought he was as good as his father if it weren't for all them propping him up, people losing on purpose. If this joust had gone the natural way, he would have already been defeated. He would have lost to like Galtree or someone before, and then he would have started questioning things long before this climactic moment.
He's in a tough spot, and like on a spot in front of everyone too, right? It's a little easier for us to think of what he could have, should have done.
Yeah, that's true.
When we're not standing there with the crowd at this awkward moment. But he probably would have been better off challenging the other conspirators for what they had done and trying to get Glendon Ball to his side rather than jousting against Glendon.
Yeah,
saying like, this whole egg being stolen thing doesn't make sense. Glendon, what I think that it may not have worked to like win this revolt, at least in the short term, but I think it would have worked better than what ended up happening.
Yeah. There's another irony here, or not an irony, or you can say no wonder Bittersteel didn't want any part of this plan. Like if he understood that they were just going to try to make this kid seem as good as Damon the First to everyone else, like how could that hold up over time? That's a lie that's gonna get exposed. I mean, Damon wasn't bad at jousting, he just wasn't great, right? Bad is, again, Caswell's our example of someone's bad, someone who can't even hold the lance straight. Again, I come back to Renly, Robert, Stannis. Renly was an adequate warrior. If they wanted to make him look good, they wouldn't have to try very hard, but if they wanted to make Renly look great, just imagine trying to make Renly look like Robert as a warrior. That's akin to what's happening here. You're trying to fool the world into thinking Damon the Second is Damon the First come again, which, again, that's sad because Damon the Second has some really great qualities. They should have leaned into those qualities instead of trying to make him be like his father. Stannis is on and on about this. It's like, look, I'm not Robert. Stop trying to make me into Robert. It's not going to work. I can't win men like Robert. A lot of how that story went is different than this situation I'm surmising here.
Yeah. But say there had been some attempt to prop Renly up and to have him, seem as great a warrior as Robert, and they wanted Stannis to take part, to come be on the council of this tournament, whatever. Stannis was like, "What? This isn't going to work. I'm not going to be any part of this." He knew better, right? So.
Yeah, it's like poker. I like to use poker analogies every once in a while because I have a lot of experience with poker. And play to your skills, right? Don't bluff unless you can get away with it, right? And in this is just not a good bluff. You got to play the hand you're dealt. They were trying to pretend they were dealt a great warrior when they were dealt a charismatic guy. They should have leaned into that, used that. This sense of justice, this sense of duty, that could have won some followers. That might have worked if they had leaned into that. I mean, like, look how honorable this guy is, You just can't get into, like, Westeros is full of people who know their business with a sword. Like, it's a highly martial society. It's just no way you can fool the realm into thinking someone's a good warrior when they're not, or a great warrior when they're not.
They did a little bit of that honor thing in that they had Damon not accept anyone's ransoms or their goods.
True, yeah.
Which is, right. They wanted him to look good there if they had just done a little more of that.
Yeah, you're right. And that was working. Like, that was, like, people were talking about it. Mm-hmm. Like, it was generating buzz. So, yeah. Oh, well. Well, let's see here. We have another line that I just can't get around this. It's just the fact that these guys just cannot get over their prejudice, even when they're insulting their own friends and such. Here we go.
Then Lord Costain slammed a fist upon the table and shouted, "It's death that one deserves, not justice." A dozen other voices echoed his, and Sir Herbert Page declared,
"He's bastard born. All bastards are thieves, or worse. Blood will tell."
Again, these men are forgetting Damon Blackfyre was a bastard. And what about when Glendon wins and Damon loses? What does that say about blood will tell? So it's like, does that mean Glendon really is the son of Fireball?
What's Bloodraven going to think about Costain when this is all done?
Yeah, right. Well, he did steal the egg, so that part's true. Got him.
I guess that dwarf must have been a bastard also.
Hey, all dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes, according to Tyrion. No. Yeah. Not really. That's Tywin. We don't take Tywin's opinion on that, though. No, don't listen to Tywin. Tywin's wrong. But so it's funny. But the thing about and blood will tell, right? This is a hugely ironic moment. Is it real? Is he Fireball's son? Is this proof? Because blood will tell. He's an amazing jouster. He's an amazing warrior. Is that proof? If based on their based on their way of weighing evidence, it kind of is. And this
Baylor would agree. The gods will let us know.
And Damon isn't. So he's not Damon's son. He lost in the moment when it mattered most. So like blood will tell, y'all. Hoisted by their own petard. They hoisted themselves by their own petard many times in this story. And here it is. Like you said, he's trying to be like his dad, as Ashea pointed out. Here's the quote.
I will settle this as my father would, the fiddler said. Sir Glendon stands accused of grievous crimes. As a knight, he has a right to defend himself by strength of arms. I shall meet him in the lists and let the gods determine guilt and innocence. Hero's blood or whore's blood, Dunk thought. When two of Lord Verywell's men dump Sir Glendon naked at his feet, he has to deal less of it than he did before.
Some more little jokes.
Yeah.
This would have gone a lot differently potentially if it had been a melee.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't
Dunk
know
was
that
hoping
Glendon
for
would
it.
have been quite as good at that, especially not in his condition.
I still hope we get that. Maybe Dunk goes to the north and we get one.
Yeah, a nice
That'd be
melee.
kind of cool. Yeah, see how he
Some
does.
wrestling.
A little bear wrestling.
By the way, theoretically, Glendon could have chosen a champion here too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess so. Dunk could have fought
Like
for him,
it,
maybe.
like you know, if he had
when I first
gotten
read
his
it, I kind of thought that. I think
Oh, yeah.
that he would name Dunk as his champion, just because Glendon was really messed up.
Yeah.
Like I guess like the quote you just read, he dumped him naked at his feet.
Yeah. He's just
like-
goes to show how amazing he is. Yeah.
Yeah, so to me, it's borderline hard to believe the sort of beating that Glendon's taken. A lot of times, I make this point a lot about how action is portrayed on screen. If you've ever been smacked in the head, if you've ever just like fallen and hit your head or been in a car wreck, you don't just jump up and start scrambling around and fighting with swords. You're really disoriented and pounding. And how many times have you ever had like a fingernail ripped off? Has that ever happened to you?
Nope.
There's 3 of them. Like it hurts a lot, and it's for days, you know. And maybe if your adrenaline's pumping, I mean, I can believe that he was able to do this, but it's tough for me to believe.
Well,
it.
the reason you can believe it, I think that we can't feel. The one thing we can't feel about this is what it's like to have your life depend on it. Like the adrenaline
That's
level
true.
when your life depends on it. Like I haven't even lost a fingernail like that, let alone my life depending on performing when I'm injured, you know?
Yeah. And it's also a little bit more believable because they did make a point of how good Glendon was.
And how bad Damon isn't.
And Damon isn't really that good, so it does add up. But say it had been a melee, or say they had chopped off Glendon's fingers or something, I feel like he should have been able to name Dunk as his champion, which would have been interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it really goes to what people thought about Glendon right there. Did they think he was capable of fighting or not?
Yeah.
Apparently they thought he was capable of fighting. I think Sean and I think he probably wasn't really, but I guess we're proven wrong. All he needed to do was sit a horse and hold the lands.
Yeah.
Which isn't a lot. Like his fingers were quite hurt, but gripping onto
it was his
something
left hand,
and like gripping with your legs isn't as hard as some other things.
Yeah.
Just staying up straight on a horse. I mean, just sitting a horse is not an easy task. It's an exertion.
Except,
and
it'd be a little bit easier for Glendon than the average person.
He's done a lot.
He's good at it, yeah.
Like,
but remember,
he doesn't have to think about it.
Not only the beating and torture, but literally, like just the one simple thing we saw when he was smacked against the face with a gloved fist. You know, with a
Gorman
plated
punches
like
him
that
right there.
alone.
Yeah.
I mean that is enough. That might have cracked your skull or smashed your eye or just the beating and pounding in your head. I mean, again, he's tough. Action often gets overdone. Injuries get downplayed. It's okay, fine. I accept it.
If or when this is on screen, I think we can hope that Glendon won't look like ridiculously beat up. And he would have been more lightly tortured.
Yeah. So going back to your point about how it's easy to be generous when you're rich, it's a similar situation here, sort of on both sides. It's easy to believe in justice through strength of arms when you're an amazing warrior, or when you think you are. So that's the problem here, is he thinks he is because they've lied to him and deceived him into thinking that. Although he really probably could have figured it out on his own that he's not as good as he thinks he is. So there's definitely some of it on him. He's 22. He's not some kid. But also, his pride has been pricked here. Dunk told him they were losing to him on purpose like 2 minutes before this. So he's got to he's like, no, I did not. So he wants to prove himself, right? A little bit of ego.
And Dunk didn't just tell him, he told everyone in the room.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, definitely. So that's a pretty big deal. And it's another reason why Damon just can't back down here. He's been told he's not good. There's justice is happening. He wants to behave like his father. Plus, the guy that's going to fight him, as we just said, is horribly beat up. So what's he going to cower before that? Like, he really shouldn't back down from that. That's a
soundtrack for the movie will be the Tom Petty song.
Yeah, I won't back down. My armor's brown. So here's another quote. Here's when things start to really fall apart for the conspirators, when they really know, it's starting to go. But before they actually see Bloodraven, before the army shows up, there's some subtle signs that something's about to happen here.
Beyond the field, a gray mist was rising, sending ghostly fingers up the pale stone walls to grip the castle battlements. By the way, what a great line.
That is awesome,
Sorry, I got to
right?
interrupt the quote. Just,
George is
yeah.
so good at this, yeah.
Many of the wedding guests had vanished during the intervening hours, but those who remained climbed the viewing stand again and settled themselves on planks of rain-soaked pine. Amongst them stood Sir Gorman Peak, surrounded by a knot of lesser lords and household knights.
We need a rhyme for sitting on rain-soaked pine, you know.
Drinking my Dornish wine.
Yeah. So the mist, that's the sign, right? The mist is rising. The mist is associated with Bloodraven both at the beginning of the story and at the end and in other places. Also, just people talk about it, that he commands the mist, things like that. So given that he's about to show up, this is pretty important. Many of the wedding guests had vanished during the intervening hours. That's also a real bad sign for the conspirators. People are like, this is just not gonna work. They can see the seams, the cracks in the seams here. They can see this plot not going the way they thought. People figuring out what's really happening. They know the sword's not here. The egg's been all this stuff. But just the signs are there. So they have to make their reveal. It's kind of like they're pivoting to another plan. They can't win the egg in the tournament. Well, next best thing, defeat the man who stole it. That will look pretty good, right? But not if it doesn't work, but that's beside the point. And then the Herald flies.
As long as you know where every other part of the, the formula.
Yeah. So then the Herald just abandons all pretense. He's like, Damon of House Blackfyre, second of his name, right-born king of the Andals, etc., titles. And why not? At this point, he's washed the dye from his hair. He's like, okay, this wasn't the way I planned on making my entrance, but it's still going to be pretty dashing. It's still going to be pretty exceptional. He's got his Valyrian hair, his purple eyes, but he loses in a manner commensurate with the opposite image they're going for, right? They're trying to make him seem amazing. He's all bright prince, shiny gold, silver, amethyst, but no, mud, mocking. And that's why you all pointed out the mockery being so perfect and on target. It may have been a plant by someone with quick wit. I don't know. It's really interesting, though, how Damon doesn't lose any confidence. But that's because, well, he believes his dreams. He's got confidence. He's like, none of this matters. Like, it's all going to work out because my dream said so. It's like, yeah, I fell in the mud. So what? In the end, my dream said, yeah, but clearly not. Nope. Sorry, Damon. Sorry. That's why he's the brown dragon, because he's Damon number 2.
Oh.
Heyo. They said piss on that fiddle boy, but really, yeah, they got both of that. They got all that covered. So,
real quick, Aziz. Intervention. I meant earlier to ask about your shirt. It looks like that's an Iron Maiden, Iron Throne.
It is, yeah. It's got
the others,
the Iron Maiden text. Yeah. Just a kind of a Game of Thrones TV show version of the others, sort of.
Lean towards the left or right. People can't see. Oh, there we go. Cool. Everyone can see now. Properly. Yeah. What's yours today, Sean? Yeah.
This is Shaolin Fantastic from The Get Down.
The lady killing romantic himself.
That's right.
That's such a good show. Where were we? The King's Hand. Yeah, so this is our second to last section, and here we will start with a quote.
An army had appeared outside the castle, rising from the morning mists. Egg wasn't lying after all, Dunk told Sir Kyle, astonished. From Maidenpool had come Lord Mooton, from Raventree, Lord Blackwood, from Duskendale, Lord Darkland. The royal demences about King's Landing sent forth Hayfords, Rossbys, Stokeworths, Massies, and the King's own sworn swords, led by 3 knights of the King's Guard and stiffened by 300 ravens' teeth, with tall white werewood bows. Mad Daniel Austin herself rode forth in strength from her haunted towers at Heron Hall, clad in black armor that fit her like an iron glove, her long red hair streaming.
Yeah, that's a great quote too. Just the roll call of who shows up is fun to read. I like that. But it's, again, the Mist and Bloodraven, the army rising from the morning mists. And who's in command of it? The Mist Man himself, Bloodraven. And Dunk told Sir Kyle, who, of course, knows a few things about Mist, being Sir Kyle, the cat of the Misty Moors. Yes, let's not forget that.
Mm-hmm.
So, notably, Mad Danelle Lofton was one of the ones the conspirators thought would join their side. So either
she's too good for that.
Yeah, she's too good for that. Either
I'm
that, or
partial
she's just
because I cosplayed her at Ice and Fire Con, and we have a Lost in Shield on our wall.
We do.
So seeing her flowing hair coming in power was awesome.
Ashea makes a mighty fine Danelle Lofton, let me say. The armor looks great too. Yeah, it is a really good cosplay. There's pictures of it out there somewhere.
I like to think I'm not so mad, but
You're not so mad, no. You do have long red hair streaming. Do you have any haunted towers?
you tell me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Good
Don't
point.
tell her. Don't
Good
tell
point. Good point. So it's a sizable army. It's like 6,000 plus people here. And there's no army for the Blackfyres, which, I mean, there's just their lords and some personal guard, which, well, yeah. It makes this whole charge idea kind of not a good idea. But he still thinks it's going to work because he thinks his dreams don't lie. So somehow he's getting out of this. Somehow. And here's the quote's actually much longer, but we didn't want to read the whole thing because it's so long. Here's another part I wanted to highlight, though.
A single white dragon announced the presence of the king's hand, Lord Brendan Rivers. Bloodraven himself had come to Whitehall. You don't say.
Or had he
Really?
just
He's here?
arrived? So it's important to point out that Butterwell tried to leave with Egg. Like, remember, they were like, go to Maidenpool. And Lord Frey's like, I'm trying to leave too. But none of them actually did. None of them were able to leave. I guess because the army had already showed up and Dunk didn't notice yet, or Black Tom and Gorman Peak had the doors all locked really well, which is weird because it's Butterwell's castle. But this all happened really fast too. So there's that. Now, as far as getting out, here's another great quote.
The first Blackfyre rebellion had perished on the Redgrass field in blood and glory. The second Blackfyre rebellion ended with a whimper. They cannot cow us, young Damon proclaimed from the castle battlements after he had seen the ring of iron that had circled them. For our cause is just. We'll slash through them and ride hellbent for King's Landing. Sound the trumpets! Instead, knights and lords and men-at-arms muttered quietly to one another, and a few began to slink away, making for the stables or postern gate or some hidey hole they hoped might keep them safe. And when Damon drew his sword and raised it above his head, every man of them could see it was not Blackfyre.
Yeah. Pretty pathetic, huh? He's like, let's go. Everybody's like, no, I don't think so. Like, not one guy is like, yeah, nope, not a one. That's a whimper, all right. That's pretty well put, George. Well point. Good said. Yeah, not much to say about that. Just fail. All caps, fail. So we talked a little bit about Roland Crakehall again at the beginning. He's the one that shows up to summon Dunk and bring him to the hand. And clearly no ill will on either side from having, since their positive encounter, after that they had to fight each other, right? They had the trial. And I don't recall them speaking after that. Maybe they did, but I don't remember if they did. So, but no ill will. Neither of them wanted to be in that fight, and they know it. And like I'm sure they both blame it on Arian.
Yeah, Roland, it seemed even happy to reunite with Dunk here.
Yeah, that's true. So here,
another.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, another thought that was spurred in me in this moment here. because Dunk thinks at one point, real close together in this little section, Dunk thinks, some old dead king gave a sword to one son instead of another. That was the start of it. And now I'm standing here. Poor Roger's in his grave. Roger Pennytree,
Yeah.
right? He's referring to, right? And then, but that line, that thought he had is right after, reflecting on something that Arlen had told him. Kings rise and fall, cows and small folk go about their business. And he thinks that's seeing cows, But those are almost in conflict with each other. He's thinking about how these big plays by the leadership of the realm, all their strife and warring amongst each other. But the average person they still have to eat breakfast and feed the crops and everything,
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's pointing out how this, transfer of swords between two lords led to the death of someone's son, you know what I mean? Of a common person. And so, I don't know, it made me think a little bit, about the themes that are present pretty consistently through this story and many works of literature. The idea of destiny versus decision, that how much you're in control of things versus, people outside of you. And the fact is, it's both. Some other lord might cause a war that shows up at your doorstep, but once the war is there, you might still decide what to do about it, or how well you've prepared yourself through life up to this moment can make a difference in how you make it through. Anyway, it's neat to see how Dunk is reflecting on these concepts here at this moment too.
It reminds me a little bit of Jorah saying, you high lords, you peasants, small folk suffer most when you high lords play your Game of Thrones. It's, they just want to be left in peace. They don't care who the king is. And they never are. They never are left in peace, though.
Yeah.
Was that Jorah who said that? Or am I mixing up two quotes? It doesn't really matter. The point is that quote
I was kind of confused.
is relevant.
I didn't think it was Jorah, but people in the chat, let us know.
Yeah, I think, I may be actually mashing two different quotes together that are kind of similar. It doesn't really matter. The point stands regardless of who said it.
It is both. You want to feel like you have control over your life, but the fact is there are things you don't have control over.
Yeah.
But that doesn't relieve you of responsibility for the actions of your life either. That you have control of a lot of your life.
Yeah, very true.
You can definitely go through your life and not steal and be kind and be generous, but an asteroid still smashes into Earth and kills everyone. Maybe you didn't have control over the asteroid, but it doesn't mean you didn't have control over how nice you were to your mother or how much you helped the less fortunate than you or whatever else.
Yeah.
It is Jorah.
It was Jorah. Okay, cool.
Yes.
All
The
right.
quote is from Jorah to Daenerys: "The common people pray for rain, healthy children, and a summer that never ends. It is no matter to them if the High Lords play their Game of Thrones, so long as they are left in peace. They never are."
That was pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
pretty
good
close.
quote. That's a really good quote. That's much more dramatic than this version of it, but it's a pretty similar sentiment, isn't it?
Again, a common theme
Yeah,
throughout this story and all of Martin's and literature in general.
Yep, and it makes sense that Jorah would, he's a highborn, he would have maybe a more flowery way of putting it than Dunk has a more rustic way of putting it. Not to criticize one versus the other, just, style. So punishments, that's of course a big thing going on here. Bloodraven shows up with an army that, as we noted last time, was clearly prepared in advance. There's no way all these houses showed up at the same time, just coincidentally, right at the right moment. No, that was very arranged and coordinated. Butterwell loses 9/10 of his wealth and his castle. Bloodraven says no one will remember White Walls in 20 years, but at the beginning of the Mystery Night, we noted that Maribald refers to it. So clearly it is still remembered. And you had a nice additional take on this, Sean.
Yeah, I wonder if 20 years later, if Sansa will still remember how Sweet Robin stomped out her White Castle.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I bet she will, because it really made her mad. And then Littlefinger kissed her right after it, so that's hard to forget because it was creepy.
Yeah.
You might want to forget it, but yeah, it may be hard to forget. Speaking of annoying young kids with lots of privilege and the desire for blood.
Can I go back to something real quick?
Yeah.
Your quote about the small folk.
Yeah.
Also said by Varys.
That's who I was
Where
thinking
he
about.
talks about
To Ned, right?
yeah, to Ned, he said, "Why is it always the innocents who suffer most when you High Lords play your Game of Thrones?" So very similar to the Jorah quote, but there's another one
Oh, good.
that Septon Maribald says to Hyle Hunt when he said, "It is being common-born that is dangerous when the great lords play their Game of Thrones." So some very similar.
No wonder I
quotes
mashed
there.
them up. There's
Yeah, they're
similar
they're all
ones out
kind
there.
of very similar with similar words of great lords and high lords and play the Game of Thrones.
Yeah, really similar sentiment all the way around though, and very accurate even to this
That
day.
last one is closest to a thought I've had many times, that, the idea that some people think that they're lucky or unlucky. Pretty much all the luck in your life is where and how you were born. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
a lot of it. Yeah.
yeah.
It sets up the rest anyway.
Yeah.
You aren't necessarily rooted in that, but yeah, it determines a lot about what your opportunities and things are. Yeah, no doubt. No
Like,
doubt.
I'm happy to be born in modern times with air conditioning. That's the luckiest part of my life.
But think about how much luckier you could be if you were born. Probably this is the luckiest you could ever be born because the planet is dying. So probably
yeah, if you wait too much longer, yeah.
Of, like, technology and we can live. So I think you are very lucky, Sean.
Yeah. You're lucky to live at a time where you have the most ever number of beverages to combine. I mean,
yes.
In the past, Sean, if he lived, let's say in the 1700s, he would have been like, okay, right here we have a fine ale, and right here we have a different ale.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to combine them.
And a little bit
I'd have been mixing goat's milk and, yeah.
You'd have been an alchemist, man. That's what you would have done.
Oh, yeah.
Sean Chemist, not alchemist. Yeah. So returning to the anecdote about the awful little kid with a beverage, and there's a beverage in this quote as well. So it's all lining up nicely here. Take it away, Sean.
Lord Frey was seated in a camp chair with a cup of wine to hand and his hideous little heir squirming in his lap. Lord Butterwell was there as well, on his knees, pale-faced and shaking.
It's like George really wants us to notice who that is, because it's not obvious. And it's obvious once you think about it. It's like, oh, that's really the Walder Frey. But calling a little child hideous is a really, like, kind of stands out. like this kid's like 4. But no, fair play. We know what he's going to do in his 90s and in between. So, pretty hideous. Now, this is where the suspicion comes in. Okay, so Bloodraven, who is well known to be a guy big on punishments. He doesn't like mercy, especially to traitors. I know we've touched on this a little bit before, but let's get deeper into it. Butterwell, in front of everybody, he's like, calls him roach, tells him, I believe only 1 in 10 of your words, strips his castle, tells him he can stay married, but like just all this insulting and stripping of power. Lord Frey, he's like, drinking a cup of wine, he's like, I'll talk to you later, Lord Frey. He just says Lord. He doesn't even call him a name. Instead of calling him Roach or something, he actually calls him by his title. So it's very, very different. And these two are pretty much equal level conspirators. Maybe Butterwell's a little bit worse because it was his egg. But Frey showed up. He was as much a part of it as anyone and was preparing to bring his army. So unless Frey cut a deal or was in on it from the beginning, it's kind of hard to see it another way. Would you agree with that, Sean, or do you have a different take?
Frey was the one that made the toast to Bloodraven.
Yes.
Also,
yes.
right, to the king's hand. When the other toasts were to the king, they were kind of,
he also did the toast to the king. He did both, but yes,
It was ambiguous to the king, yes. But then specifically to Bloodraven, even if he was kind of towing the line at that moment. Nina had a lot of thoughts on this, but it also occurred to me that whether or not Frey was in on this from the beginning, or maybe somewhere in the midst of it unfolding, he got approached by Bloodraven or realized it was falling apart, or I could see a lot of ways.
Or he had the foresight to realize that Bloodraven would have spies there. He's like, well, I'm not as dumb as these other guys who think that Bloodraven couldn't possibly know about any of this.
He's hedging his bets on some level, if not actively.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's that. So yeah, seems like we pretty well agree on that. So the lack of punishment, the idea that these guys are the Red Wedding folks in the long run, the ones that cut a deal with the other side, it fits super well. It's not 100% certain, but the circumstantial evidence is maybe not quite to the level of Maynard Plumm as Bloodraven. We don't have definitive proof of that, but it's really, really up there. Like, man, there sure is a lot of evidence for this. And one take from Nina here, I'll read this. She says, notable that all of what Lord Frey does here seems right up to his future successor, Walder's alley. Advantageous marriages that get rid of unwanted family members. Compare Lord Walder's comment to Catelyn that, well, when seeking out Edmure as a possible son-in-law, what I wanted was to get rid of a daughter. Is what he says. But he's also supporting a political cause on the ground floor for a suitable price, right? If Robb had succeeded, Lord Walder would have had multiple marital connections to this Victoria Starks, a queen, daughter, granddaughter, great-granddaughter. It would have been like it's a ground floor on like the equivalent of buying stock in a corporation before it goes public. So you get big profits out of that, but you back out of it before the penalty happens for being so bought in. So yeah, it's very, very similar. Gotta take all this into account, and it lines up really nicely. Anything to add to that, Sean?
Nothing particular.
All right, let's talk about something we briefly touched on before, the notion that I sort of downplayed the notion that Bloodraven would be okay with Damon being allowed to just be at court and hang out and be there as a, not an advisor, but just allowed to be around. And maybe I was too harsh on that possibility because, again, it's not his call, even though he is not in charge. He's in charge in a way. Like, people maybe exaggerate that he's truly the guy ruling when it's Aerys. I think that's overstated a bit, but it is somewhat true. And there's this line that suggests the possibility even from Bloodraven himself.
Besides, such a noble captive will be an ornament to our court and a living testament to the mercy and benevolence of his grace King Aerys.
And something you said before that I want to touch on again that I like a lot, just what it does for future stories. The idea that Damon's still alive, you could have conversations with him or something. That would be really interesting, potentially. I would look forward to that if it's on the menu. I kind of doubt that it is, but there could be a little more. There could be a coda or a postscript or epilogue to Damon's story.
And it's also, it provides so many potentials, right? And there's so many ways it could play out. It's hard for me to believe that Martin doesn't take advantage of one of them, whether he's literally in prison, but you would think, kind of a royal prisoner. I think we've seen other characters, not always, like some characters who were imprisoned in one way or another, like Jaime, are not treated particularly well, right?
Yeah. Like
on a dirt floor, smashed in the face, hand cut off even, right? But other prisoners are like Davos at one point, different people are treated well as prisoners. So you can imagine, especially after years and years, maybe as a prisoner, that people are going to go visit him. And especially as different prophecies he's had start to come true, Bloodraven himself might realize I need to have more conversations with him. But it might not even be that negative. Even it might be more positive that he might be accepted into court because he was very charismatic. He was very honorable. There's lots of things about him that might, even if he doesn't win Bloodraven over, he might win a lot of other people over. And eventually Bloodraven has to concede to allowing him some more liberties.
Or killing him.
And poisoning him in prison. And maybe it does just kill him. Maybe in a way that is not so apparently controversial.
Yeah.
But you could see that the reality of how he's gonna play out as a prisoner has a lot of potentials, and the value of him being a character in a story is very great. The little insights he could get, the conversations he could have, et cetera, et cetera.
Like Aerys. So go ahead.
I was going to ask, do you think it's possible that Dunk will meet Damon again?
I
think so.
I hope so, but okay. I kind of think no, but I hope so.
Okay.
Like they'd have to go to court, and he'd have to still be alive, and I'm not sure. Right now they're probably going north, so I don't know if they would get back to court before he's alive. One other reason they might keep him alive too is like Aerys is really interested in these dragon dreams and prophecies, and it's like, well, this is a real dragon dreamer, so like that's a resource,
Yeah. By the way, I'm sure of it. I'm confident. Just by the 7th book. Just wait and see.
Yeah,
You'll see.
Okay.
Try to prove me wrong.
By the 7th book. Good one.
Yeah, Damon doesn't he dies as late as 219.
Yeah.
So there's a while there.
Yeah. There is a while. Yeah, it's true. That's a good 7 whole years, 7+ years. I wonder too. Does Bloodraven kind of hate Glendon Ball? I wonder about that because he's kind of irrational about Blackfyre supporters, and he really hates Fireball probably because Fireball turned on them, and Fireball was like maybe a role model to him. He's the guy who trained him at arms initially. And now I'm making a few assumptions here, but it's just something that's possible. Does he dislike Glendon Ball, or is he predisposed to dislike him? Because even after all this, he's still a guy that like espoused all this like hardcore loyalty to the Blackfyres, which is Bloodraven is just not okay with that. Maybe on the other hand, he's not going against Egg's wishes. He's like, I want him freed, I want him rewarded, all this other stuff. Not that he needs rewarding. I mean, Glendon hooked up all those ransoms. He's sitting pretty actually, but although I imagine maybe some of those lords took that opportunity to take their stuff back when they threw him in prison. I wonder if they did that.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised at
very
all.
possible.
If they just like looted him while he was getting tortured. Like, that would make a lot of sense. That's the kind of petty thing they would do. Like that one guy put holes in his armor before giving it to him. Like, geez, that's very petty. Anyway,
and think, Glendon didn't have like an advocate, as far as I know. He didn't have a squire. He didn't have someone looking out for his stuff, yeah. Maybe as this all plays out, he does get his stuff back, or maybe even more stuff if some of these lords are executed or stripped of their possessions.
That's true.
But again, it might depend on Bloodraven or even Egg.
Yeah, Black Tom's dead. Who gets that demon armor and that big horse? Someone gets that big horse.
Yeah.
Glendon would look pretty cool riding that thing.
It'd be awesome if Dunk got it.
Yeah, that Dunk would be appropriate on that horse. He'd be really intimidating, man. He'd like not quite Gregor size, but it's up there, right? He'd be this generation's Gregor, but the opposite disposition and personality.
A thought I had a few minutes ago that I forgot that I got back now is that when we were talking about the nature of the ending of the story, and it was a little abrupt. That's another element of writing, I guess, that a lot of times in TV shows or book series, when it ends and the next one starts, we've made a bit of a jump. So, it's usually like at least a day, maybe a month, or even a year or more in the case between these Dunk and Egg books. But sometimes you pick up right where you left off.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's potential for that in this story, especially given how abruptly it ended, that maybe the next story does pick up still in the wake of this moment. And we get, whether it's like what loot Glendon Ball gets after all, or maybe even some sort of, I don't know how to say this, like learning moment that Bloodraven has, and maybe he realizes how unfairly, he maybe relates to how unfairly Ball was treated as a bastard because he knows how people think of him, and maybe that, is an opportunity for a shifting of opinion that he has. And I could see a lot of very interesting things coming in literally the next 1 hour after we leave this story that could set up a lot of more future stuff. I could also see Martin skipping a whole year ahead. And they're in Winterfell, but
I'm gonna guess. I would guess the latter, but I can see what you're saying. It's a possibility for sure.
And even in a skip ahead, it's still easy for people to reflect back on this moment to reveal to us what Glendon got.
A couple
or
of flashbacks.
Dunk has this horse now.
Yeah, that's true. Like if
Which
they have
again
the horse,
happens a
it's
lot.
pretty obvious what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like, remember Dunk's dream about Dorne. There's all kinds of ways for Martin to fill in some details, even if he makes a big jump forward.
True that. Good said. Here is a great moment when Bloodraven is telling Dunk how he should treat Egg, and they have a nice exchange.
You ought to beat that out of him.
I've tried, my lord. He's a prince, though.
What he is, said Bloodraven, is a dragon. Rise, sir.
So this is funny because Bloodraven is now confronted with the information that Egg just stone cold bluffed Butterwell into thinking as an agent. He was an agent. As implausible as it is, he tried it and it worked. Even better, even though Bloodraven maybe doesn't hear this part, Egg tells Dunk earlier that he learned the trick from Bloodraven indirectly. Quote,
I knew I was in trouble when the maester showed Lord Butterwell my ring. I thought about saying that I had stolen it, but I didn't think he would believe me. Then I remembered this one time I heard my father talking about something Lord Bloodraven said, about how it was better to be frightening than frightened. So I told him that my father had sent us here to spy for him, and that he was on his way here with an army, that his lordship had best release me and give up this treason, or it would mean his head. He smiled a shy smile. It worked better than I thought it would, sir.
That's so great. Yeah, it's so true too, right?
What was Maynard talking to Bloodraven about?
Yeah, what were they talking? See, it's another thing that maybe a small piece of evidence that Maynard didn't actually hate Bloodraven. He hated that Bloodraven got the job, but he didn't hate him. But he did eventually employ him as his hand as well. So something has to explain that. But more relevantly probably is this: it sets up Bloodraven realizing what kind of a kid Egg is. He's like, he is a dragon. Like, they knew each other before, but Egg was so young, he probably didn't have much reason to pay much attention to him. He was probably so young that it didn't even matter. So this is like an eye-opening moment for Bloodraven. Like, this prince is got some courage. He's a little interesting, isn't he? A little up-and-comer here.
I know. He's more clever than some of the others and not a drunken sot.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's seen the same boldness and cleverness that Dunk sees.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really interesting to think about what's going to happen later. Bloodraven's going to preside over the Great Council that chooses Egg for the throne in 233 after Maekar is killed in the Peak Uprising.
But yeah, I think that's a great thing to point out, that Bloodraven, chooses him, and that likely Bloodraven will have experienced other cool things that Egg has done in this interim time. Because, for example, Dunk and Egg in the Riverlands, Blackwoods and Brackens, that's going to be pretty relevant to Bloodraven.
The third Blackfyre rebellion, perhaps biggest of all, because apparently they're both a big deal in the third Blackfyre and do important deeds, especially Egg is noted particularly. And that also, Nina points out, that might be where Glendon Ball shores up his loyalty. If he fights for the loyalists and doesn't fight for the Blackfyres, then that would settle the issue of whose side he's really on, and that would kind of open the door for him to join the Kingsguard later. Because Bloodraven might be like, nah, no Kingsguard for him. This guy was a Blackfyre. But if he fights against the Blackfyres, that would put that to bed. So I like that as a prediction. It works pretty well as far as like how we can get from point A to point B. Obviously, there's plenty of other details that would happen in between there, but those high points could easily be hit. I like that too. So we have this quote about the dream here, but we kind of covered that at the beginning, unless you had something else to add to it. Sean, we talked about it in regard to Dunk going, oh, wow, other dreams are true. But I guess we probably covered that, unless you had anything else to add.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. One thing I wanted to add is the egg that was stolen. We're talking about how it was stolen and all that. This egg, probably one of the ones destroyed at Summerhall. It's a cool looking egg too. Red with black on it. I mean, yeah, it is a Blackfyre colored egg. It's it's the red with a little bit of black. If it was black with a little bit of red, well, that would be Drogon. That's what Drogon's egg looked like. So that one wouldn't have been destroyed, but this is the opposite.
I did have another thought. It's slightly disconnected from this particular idea, but just revolving around the dragon egg. Remember we talked about Uthor Peak? Was that his name?
Underleaf, yeah.
Underleaf. The idea that he didn't want to win this tournament, that would like kind of ruin his business model, if you will.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that, like, how much is his business model worth? It can't be worth more than a dragon egg. You know what I mean? Like, you can just retire. You don't need to go around making these bets and feigning these losses if you win a dragon egg. But it made me wonder a couple things. One, if maybe he was more keen to what was really going on here.
Maybe.
And it's he could just lose and get his money and go home and have plausible deniability about any of it. Whereas if he wins this dragon egg, he's going to get more tied up. I'm not sure.
I mean, I think you might you weigh a sure thing versus a gamble. And he's not assured of winning dragon egg, whereas he can be assured of making money through gambling.
Right, but like say he makes all of the gambles, say he does everything like normal, but then wins the dragon.
Well, that would mean he wins on purpose. How's he going to win on purpose? If he's trying to lose, that's not going to happen, right?
I guess that's true. But if can gauge, like it seemed like Ball, who is way less experienced than Underleaf, could gauge how not good Damon was.
That's true.
Right? Like Underleaf should have been able to gauge this. Now maybe he knows he can't beat Black Tom or something else. I don't know.
That's a fair point. Like he wasn't expecting to get to the finals and be facing an idiot, So he probably wasn't he wasn't acknowledging that possibility. Fair point,
Idiot. I'm sorry, but what's shade on Damon II? Out of nowhere. You're like,
Not out of nowhere.
idiot.
Ball said I couldn't lose to him if I tried.
It doesn't.
And then he did lose to him, having been beaten, tortured, and fingernails ripped out. He
That
still
doesn't
beat
make
him,
you an
easily
idiot.
beat him.
That makes you a bad fighter.
Okay, yeah.
I
Anyway,
guess.
I'm putting my
Yeah.
I'm putting words in Uthor's mouth. He was real. That's the kind of thing he would say.
My other thought, though, was that it was interesting, however much he might have understood about the plot or his odds of winning or whatever. It's just still the idea. He wasn't even thinking about it. It didn't seem. And it's something, it's just like a part of the human nature, I guess, that a lot of times we're more comfortable continuing to do with what we're good at.
Yeah.
And then something that might even be better, it's just an interesting observation. I think
Sure.
the idea that he would rather continue with this life that he's molded for himself rather than rather than secure something that's probably way more
He
valuable.
may not actually know what it's worth. That's possible. And it's also possible they're not. Yeah, the values change. I'm not sure. The value may have changed. I don't know. It
It's
does
also
seem
possible he's way
wealthy.
wealther than we realize too.
Yeah, he
If
was
all the
very
winnings have been
rich.
well invested over time, that's
Yeah,
another
there's a certain level
possibility.
where you're like, he enjoys it.
Yeah.
It's his
He might also
job,
be
it's his
taxed
career.
on it. Who knows how
I
taxes
might worry about
work, but
getting
I can
stolen.
imagine.
Yeah, I'd
I
have to
mean,
keep
if I
it
got a
from-
dragon egg,
yeah.
I'd probably just relocate to the free city somewhere and sell my egg and, go to the pleasure houses or, I don't know, retire. I wouldn't
I'd
stay in
probably accept
Westeros.
some ransom. Like, can I just get like 10,000 gold dragons and you keep the egg and just give me some money and yeah.
So as far as how the egg was stolen, Bloodraven doesn't fully say what happened. He's kind of cagey about it, but he clearly isn't like concerned that people know. It kind of enhances his reputation, showing just how easily he took this whole thing down without, having to fire an arrow or draw a sword or whatever. He knew how to hit them where it hurts, right? The loss of the egg caused the awkward accusation of Glendon. The whole house of cards came collapsing down. But let's look at some of the evidence with the dwarves. George writes it in a certain way that sets this up nicely. Here's the quote from when Dunk encounters the dwarves well before the end here. This is about halfway through the story.
There were 6 of them he saw, each smaller and malformed than the last. A few might have been children, but they were all so short that it was hard to tell. In daylight, dressed in horsehide breeches and rough-spun hooded cloaks, they seemed less jolly than they had in motley. "Good morrow to you," Dunk said, to be courteous. "Are you for the road? There's clouds to the east. Could mean rain." The only answer that he got was a glare from the ugliest dwarf. "Was he the one I pulled off Lady Butterwell last night?" Up close, the little man smelled like a privy. One whiff was enough to make Dunk hasten his steps.
Pretty easy to skip that line over first time through, but privy, yeah, just like there's very specific. It smelled like a privy because he was in one. He was literally in a privy. That's why he smells like one. And notice the mention of children there. That's another thing that's set up. He's like, a few might have been children. And then Bloodraven says, someone like a child could have gone up through the shaft.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah. So here's that line. When Tyrion, thinking of Tyrion and Land the Clever squeezing into Casterly Rock and all that, we might see parallels to that much farther down the line. So here's the quote.
This was Egg asking.
Yeah, Egg
I
wants
think,
to know.
right?
Yeah, he wanted to know how it happened.
Who took the dragon's egg? There were guards at the door and more guards at the steps. No way anyone could have gotten into Lord Butterwell's bedchamber unobserved.
Lord Rivers smiled. Were I to guess, I'd say someone climbed up inside the privy shaft.
The privy shaft was too small to climb.
For a man, a child could do it.
Or a dwarf, Dunk blurted out, 1,000 eyes in one. Why shouldn't some of them belong to a troop of comic dwarfs?
So I like to think that since this is a child could do it, then Egg could have done it. Egg could have stolen the egg, theoretically. Maybe he's too big, but it would have been fun if Egg stole the egg, but no. So it's also maybe a little similar, or at least a reminder of what happens with Tyrion and Jorah at the slave auction when he tells Nurse that Jorah is part of the show. Like Bear and the Maiden Fair is like, we need him. He's the bear. And because the reason this comes up is Dunk thinks about joining their troop. Like not seriously, but kind of ruefully. Like that would be a funny sight. 6 dwarves pummeling a giant with pig bladders, which when Tyrion describes, he says, the bear and the maiden fair. Jorah's the bear. Penny is the maiden. I'm the brave knight who rescues her. I dance about and hit them in the balls. Very funny. So it's
that was also right after Dunk had lost. and lost his arms and his horse and everything. So
Yeah.
it might have been a more serious consideration
You're right.
than you realize.
Yeah, you're right. It was kind of serious, but he was like, I guess I could do that. You know?
Yeah.
He's like, you're right. He's a little desperate. So. Speaking of, so that last section there is a lot of implications, like the implication that Maynard was Bloodraven, the implication that the egg was really egg instead of, or the dragon that hatched was really egg, the implication of the ring, implication of all these other things. Really a series of implications here at the end. So I thought it would be appropriate for us to have all of the romantic implications that Damon dropped on Dunk throughout the whole time. Nina compiled this a while ago, and I saved it for right now.
Romantic implications. Now, I was waiting for the Sunny reference.
Yeah, it's not romantic.
Now you got that.
Yeah, it's more like sexual. Yeah,
the implication.
Yeah, because
I
of the
figure we
implication.
can alternate.
Sure. Yeah, let's take turns reading these. Shay, you go first.
I would love to cross swords with you, sir. I've tried men of many lands and races, but never one your size.
Oh man, so he's promiscuous, clearly. Sean, go ahead.
Perchance we'll meet again someday. I hope so. I should love to try my lance on you.
Whoa, that's so blatant. Hurry back, sir, said the fiddler. There are jugglers yet to come, and you do not want to miss the betting.
That's where we were going, Egg and me. Up north, to Winterfell.
Would that I could join you. You could show me the way. And then
If you stay on the road and keep going north, you can't miss it. The fiddler laughed. I suppose not, though you might be surprised at what some men can miss.
I dreamed that you were all in white from head to heel, with a long, pale cloak flowing from those broad shoulders. You are a white sword, sir, a sworn brother of the Kingsguard, the greatest knight in all the Seven Kingdoms, and you've lived for no other purpose but to guard and serve and please your king.
Please your king? That I didn't know that was part of the vows. Guard and serve are definitely in there. I don't know about please though. Is that really part of the Kingsguard vows?
Dunk shrugged away the lordling's hand, which had begun to knead his shoulder.
Yeah, like who does that?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That was to me the clearest implication
He's
that
just
Dunk was not
touching
having
him.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next one.
You'd look good.
Wait.
You'd look a god in white, I think. But if the color does not suit you, perhaps you would prefer to be a lord.
This made me think of when I said Bramey for a second.
Bramey, yeah, well.
Their ship name made me think of when Brienne is describing Jaime and she says he's looking half a corpse and half a god. You know, people who are attracted to others.
There's I suppose that means I'll have to take the throne then. I would much rather be teaching you to fiddle.
To my bed, to sleep. I'm drunk as a dog. Be my dog, sir.
Be my
go
dog,
ahead.
sir. The night's alive with promise. We can howl together and wake the very gods.
Howl together. Oof. So Nina writes there's a historical reference there, potentially, if not intentional, then it certainly works unintentionally. She says George Villiers, the Duke of Buckingham, or Villiers, I don't know how to say that. Probably Villiers, since Villiers would be French, and this is the Duke of Buckingham. Anyway, and almost certainly the lover of James VI and First, who signed a letter to the king as Your Majesty's humble slave and dog. Yeah, okay. Here's one. What do you want of me?
Your sword. I would make you mine own man and raise you high.
Your sword. I want your sword, all right.
You are jousting on the morrow, pray recall. Kirby Pym can prove a dangerous foe.
I had hoped to joust with good Sir Duncan here.
And then, wine makes me talk too much, but I meant every word. We belong together, you and I. My dreams do not lie. Ooh, that one rhymes even. That's
that
why
one was
we did
intense.
it last.
I'm coming on a little strong there.
Yeah, just
We
over and
belong
over and over.
together.
Yeah, you'd be
You haven't
surprised
even
what
been
some
on
men
a
could
first
miss.
date. I guess the roof maybe was the date.
Yeah, he was trying to give him roofies. Heyo. Fiddler on the Roof. That roof was full of jokes. I love, and of course the best being, what are you doing here in my bedroom? That's such a funny joke. I love that. We have like the awkward Darth Vader in the third prequel movie where he's like where Padme dies. Spoiler. Here's the quote.
No, he heard Lord Pete cry out in anguish. No.
So I think George is having some fun there. Like, no.
And that'll definitely in the movie he'll fall to his knees, platoon style.
Yeah, no. Sir Glendon's fingers. They're tower. He has Tower of Joy fingers. It's 7 against 3. 3 of them lost their fingernails. It's 7. Also, when here's another funny moment when Bloodraven is confronting Egg and Dunk about what happened. Well, here we go.
No, my lord. I mean, yes, my lord. That's what Egg told him, Aegon. I mean, Prince Aegon. So that part's true. It isn't what you'd call the true truth, though.
I see. So the two of you learned of this conspiracy against the crown and decided you would thwart it by yourselves? Is that the way of it?
That's not it either. We just sort of blundered into it, I suppose you'd say. Egg crossed his arms.
And Sir Duncan and I had matters well in hand before you turned up with your army.
That is so like out of Scooby-Doo, like, and I would have worked too if it weren't for these meddling kids. Of course, this time Egg and Dunk are the meddling kids.
It's also like real Harry Potter-esque.
Is it? Yeah.
That the main characters every year they like blunder into some conspiracy that's happening and save the day.
That's fun. Also to add a few more funny moments here. This ebook copy that we have now, we have the Night of Seven Kingdoms book. We have multiple copies of that, but we have an e-copy that's got a few weird misspellings in it. Maynard Plumm is the name in one spot. Uthor Unclerleaf instead of Underleaf, Unclerleaf. So he's your uncle that sells you weed, I guess. Black Tony instead of Black Tom. It was like Tony.
With an I.
Yeah, with an I. Toni. Yeah. So instead of Tom, it's just the way the letters are formed. And the Blackfyre Rebellion.
That's really relevant.
That's really
accurate.
that's on the nose.
That's a Freudian slip.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Freudian type, yeah. For Freudian print, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
So
there was another point that Nina made.
Yeah, go for
there
it.
was a story. Oh, I think it was Calvin Coolidge, who was known for being, I don't know, reserved, I guess, witty maybe, but someone had made a bet that she could get him to say at least 3 words in conversation with him, and he replied, "You lose."
Yeah.
And it's kind of like when Dunk said, "You lie." That's 2 words.
Like, I'm not going to say a third one, and that's it.
You lose.
That is great. Yeah, that is really good. Let's see here. So, Dunk thinks that Egg's hair would look like Damon's if he ever let it grow like that. And of course he will. In fact, Nina points out, George describes the Targaryen kings to the artist Amok. The notes that George gave to the artist have been made public over the years, so we got direct directions from George on how these characters should look, that's straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And he said in his description was having hair falling to his collar. So in fact, it is not only going to grow, it's going to grow to that length. So that's very cool.
Makes me kind of sad.
By the way,
yeah.
I don't know, just the idea of Egg growing up, he's an adult with his long blonde hair, and Dunk's gonna experience that. I don't know.
Yeah.
You have a certain image of him. You don't want to lose it.
I don't want to see him grow up. Yeah, really.
It's the
Also,
opposite
his hair's
of
gonna burn away.
it's the opposite
one
of
day,
Samson.
you guys. I don't know if you know fantasies.
Oh yeah, it'll burn away. True. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, that'll be the last thing. Damn. Nice one,
I think
Ashea.
that's the first thing that goes, probably.
Yeah, you're right. The first thing. Yeah. Unless it's the TV show. Danny's hair didn't burn off.
This talk reminds me of something, by the way. At what point is Dunk described as having long hair? Because the first time, I think the first time I, quote unquote, read this was actually the audiobook.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have a visual image because the actual book has, illustrations, and Dunk has, kind of relatively long shoulder length hair. in those illustrations, but I never had a picture of him as having long hair. And so I'm wondering if there's some evidence or some line I missed or some outside the book statement that George made. And I was even reinforced with my thought of him not really having long hair when Underleaf told him, you should grow your hair out. The wilder, the longer, the better, you know? So
specifically had a line that I cited earlier, which is where he has a thick mass of sun-streaked hair.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's long down to his shoulders. You could still have a mass of
think about
hair
it
that
this way.
isn't long.
Think about it this way. I think what Underleaf was saying is he wants it to be really long, really crazy long, really wild, which it's not. But here's the thing. There's no scissors. Like these guys, he's a hedge knight. You know what I'm saying? Like he takes a bath once a month. Like when's he getting his hair cut? You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no way he has a short haircut.
Yeah, so
I mean, I think he's shaving his head, so
yeah, that's true. That is true that he's shaving his head, but I think it's more
there
likely
are scissors.
that
The more I think about
no,
it,
I mean he doesn't have them though.
He might not have them. Yeah,
they would have
more
a
than
razor
his shoulders was kind of what I guessed. And
yeah,
a lot of the art seems to show that as well.
I've come to accept it, but for like a year at least, I think I was in my mind he didn't have long hair.
I'm in the opposite page where it's like I've seen people, depict him with short hair occasionally or fan cast him, and I'm just like, I can't possibly see this as Dunk. He doesn't have like these brown blonde locks that I imagine.
Yeah, he's
kind of like
a
heartthrob would in the 90s kind of thing. Like that kind of hair is what I picture, to be honest.
Dunk, the new kids on the Dunk.
And Duncan
new
DiCaprio,
Dunks on the block.
No, who's big like Dunk? No one.
No one. Yeah, no one's big like Dunk. It's impossible. So, question from Lord Commander Namian Darkland: is there a chance Bloodraven had stand-ins at court? How else could the most famous man in the kingdom be away from King's Landing on these sneaky missions and not be known that the Hand isn't at court? The Hand has reasons to leave, going out on missions. I think mostly he's the second in command. No one's going to be able to be like, where have you been? Especially not a bookish king. Huh?
They'd be cognizant, I would think, of it.
Not necessarily. If he just says he's leaving, like they wouldn't necessarily know. They'd be like, where is he? He's like, oh, he's not here.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just a thing that people there at White Walls would know is what Bloodraven is not at court.
But they,
Whether they guess anything more. I mean, clearly they didn't really think he was there, but
I think the point is accurate. They would know he's not at court. I don't think he would need a stand-in, but that doesn't mean they would know where he is, or so. But it's true. Yeah, I don't think a stand is necessary. Having the Hand to be away is normal enough.
Depends on how you define stand-in. Also, I mean, it would make sense that there would be some sort of, I don't know what phrase used, subordinate, secretary, or advisor, or someone.
Someone's got to run things.
Bloodraven probably has multiple squires, probably a senior squire.
There's the rest of the small council. There's plenty of other people.
Yeah.
There's the Raven's mouth,
the Raven's beak, the Raven's eyes, the Raven's wings. Yeah. The Raven's.
The Raven's.
Bloodraven could probably go toe to toe on bird law with you.
Yeah, he definitely could.
That's true.
See, if he missed his calling. If he's Hand to the King, he should have been Master of Laws, Master Bird Laws. His calling. That's great. Dornish Dame says the mud makes me think of Quentin. She wants fire, and Dorne sent her mud. Oh yeah, it's Barristan's thinking of how it might have worked better for this marriage opportunity if Quentin was not so plain looking.
A little more charismatic and spicy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Joe Magician, hey, what's up, Joe Magician? My friend Joe, hanging out. Good to see you in the chat. He says, Aegon burning to death. No, not my hair. Dunk loved my hair. Ooh. Damn, Joe. That's rough, but good. Good call.
Way to get dark.
Yeah, that's a good one. Catelyn's last thoughts there. Oof, man. Sheristy Star says, I think the abrupt ending is indicative of the mystery genre, where the protag gets a quippy, humorous, or insightful one-liner, exit omnis, defined as used as a stage direction to indicate that all the characters leave the stage. Oh, okay. That's cool. Bringing in a little theater knowledge there, mystery and theater knowledge. That's cool.
Any of us three are into the mystery genre or familiar with it. I don't know how many mystery films you feel like you've seen, Sean. It's not a genre I tend to watch. So tropes to do with it, I would definitely miss.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is a mystery.
That's true. The mystery.
I haven't
night.
really considered mystery as a genre, but I guess it is.
Oh, it
or
is.
should be.
It's one of the most major genres and classic ones there are, in my opinion. Not in my opinion. In fact, I think.
Yeah, and it's reflected by the fact that amongst podcasts, the most popular podcast genre is true crime, which is very similar because true crimes
that's
very much are real world mysteries a lot of times. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I don't mean to question it as a genre. I just don't think of it. When I think of genres, I think of comedy, action, sci-fi. Mystery doesn't occur to me.
Like mystery, there are a lot of mystery TV shows and movies, but far more often there are mystery books. I think that it's a more prevalent in that in literature.
I think the genre is probably not as popular as it used to be as a standalone. I think it's now more of a less defined category and more of like it's part of a category.
But
like
you think
mystery
of like
is part of other things.
Agatha Christie, I'm
or
sure you know
Hardy
that
Boys.
name,
Hardy Boys, right?
Mystery
There's definitely Mystery maybe is another one too that could be mashed with a lot of other genres.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It works really well with like sci-fi mystery, like The Expanse season 1. There's a detective mystery kind of woven into it, right? Like that's a big part of like a film noir style, and then season 2/book 2, it's entirely different. Yeah. But anyway, we're off topic. That's a very good comment there. Thanks for that, Shiera. Julie A with another rhyme. Copper and walnut guard me fierce, so his steel doesn't pierce. Pretty good.
We have a note from our good friend Rudy, who said more mystery books sell than maybe all adult fiction combined.
Now, Rudy works at a bookstore. His parents have owned a bookstore his whole life, so he would know. And he's been involved in various aspects of book selling throughout his life in certain ways. So he's a good source on that, so I believe him. Right on. As far as trials and contrived trials, as far as upbringing, Dornish James says we see this a bit in the main series with young Griff going through all these trials and it being contrived in comparison to what Jon and Dany, for example, endure. Yes, this is a microcosm of that. The fake trials for Damon to prove he's worthy as compared to young Griff. Oh, he's learned to be in fear and fish and, mend nets and do all these common person stuff. But we've sort of talked back against that notion because, he's done all these things, but he's always known all alongside that he's a king. Like he's also been protected even while he's been living like that way. Whereas Dany and Jon have actually faced these real fears and supernatural monsters and things like that.
And, of course, here we have Damon versus Egg, who are both experiencing, the counterpoint exactly like young Griff and Jon and Dany.
That's a really good take. You're absolutely right. Yeah, because Egg is out here living like a hedge knight. He's really experiencing what the world is like, which is very similar to Dany, being out in the world, being chased around, being hunted.
Not so many travails and trials for Egg, but still a lot, but not so rough.
Egg isn't sold into slavery or, raped by a warlord, or anything like that.
Abused lightly by his stepmother, so to speak.
Yeah, although he did experience abuse by his brother.
You're right. You are right. Egg has had to go through that.
Having a dagger held up to his privates and things like that. That's
big. That's super major.
That's
I think worse than what Jon went through with Catelyn.
Yes. Yeah, Catelyn didn't physically torture him.
Yeah, I mean hers was it was mental abuse, but I mean even that sort of mental abuse, I don't think it was as significant as
doesn't sound like
Jon.
it. No.
Though Jon would have gone through it for many more years.
Yeah.
However bad something is, the time you go through it is another factor.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Very true. So these are really good connections, y'all. Very good parallels, very good noticing of common themes throughout the story, things that George liked to draw our attention to. Last point here. This is an interesting take from Nina. What's interesting about it, the take is solid, but what's interesting from my perspective is I couldn't decide where to put it. I think it works in a lot of spots to talk about this, but I decided to put it at the end because recently I've been thinking about A Song of Ice and Fire as a whole, and one criticism I've seen of it is that it's a little bleak in terms of showing functional relationships. There's not a lot of portrayals of quality relationships. The ones that are good don't last, and a lot of the other ones are dysfunctional or not very good. And that's an authorial choice. Nothing wrong with that. But some people could say, man, I wish there were at least a couple of really good friendships that we could really lean on more. Dunk and Egg does that, right? That's where we have that. This is something that Dunk and Egg provides that maybe A Song of Ice and Fire has less of, even though this is a much smaller story. It's much stronger in its portrayal of a really healthy relationship between two people from different backgrounds, different ages. Nina writes, I love the reunion of Dunk and Egg. It really shows how close the two of them have become over the course of a year or two. Dunk is the sort of big brother Egg never had, not an alcoholic coward like Daron, nor a sadist like Arion, nor even good-natured but unmartial like Aemon. Yeah, Aemon's a good person, but he's very different than Dunk. Good point. While Egg is the little brother Dunk certainly never had. For all of Dunk's mostly empty threats of clouts in the ear, and for all of Egg's mocking of Dunk's non-aristocratic background, these two really care about each other, and it's nice to see that. It's nice to see George write that well, and it gives a sense of, I don't know, it's a sense of happiness, a sense of joy that maybe A Song of Ice and Fire doesn't have as much of, because it's so dark so often, so good, so awesome, so amazing. But yeah, it's a fair thing, the point that Dunk and Egg has that maybe A Song of Ice and Fire doesn't. What do you think about that, Sean?
Yeah, I like that. My mind is spinning on the nature of all the different relationships and the characters. It's another, like, aside from relationships, it's hard. There are only a few, as expansive and as many characters as this story has. There are only a few real good guys. There's even a lot of protagonistic characters and popular characters still have like these questionable elements, Ned or Caitlyn or Dany or whoever. And so when it's hard to even find very many good characters, having them interact well with each other is even more rare, right?
Yeah.
So it is a really good point that Dunk and Egg are two good characters that interact well with each other. It is kind of a sweet spot in the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, like, we had a really good relationship early on, Ned and Catelyn. That was a really good relationship, but it just didn't get to last, right? They were separated really quickly, then they both died. I mean, and
yeah.
But also, I think part of what George is saying is it's hard to have really good functional relationships when there's so much power in the balance between these things. Like, it's hard for people with such great power when their relationships depend on who they're connected to have normal, healthy relationships, you know, and we got kings and queens and princes and princesses and politics and ins and outs like that. Yeah, like that would mess up relationships a lot. Like how even
to be fair,
it's a very different picture. Even if it's a healthy relationship, it looks different than a, you know, this kind of relationship or whatever.
Power and responsibility, to be fair.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of them aren't very responsible with their power. You're right, but the betrayals are often irresponsible. But he's
even
showing he's showing what responsible should be. He's like, see these failures. Yeah. Yeah. Well point.
A lot of times when you have, I don't know how to say this, big responsibilities to like a large number of people or to some entity, you know, if you're the lord of some land or the president of some company or whatever it is, it's going to put a strain on your personal relationships with your, you know, I don't know, your parents or your children or whatever. When you have to, you know, it's understandable to me that someone sacrifices some of their quote unquote personal life. If you have a bunch of employees and they all have their own families and their rents and their mortgages, they kind of count on you to lead a company to make sure they keep getting paid, their livelihoods are secure.
Yeah. And
so you may sacrifice some of your familial relationships so that scores of other people can maintain theirs.
True.
That might be understandable, but still tough, you know?
Yeah, you're right. That's a great point, or a well point. A good said for sure. Good way to hit our outro here. Joe Magician also sends a super chat, says Damon's seduction backfired on him. Ayo with a Y, backfired. Yes, it did. Good one. See, that's why you should check out Joe Magician's channel. He's also got some pretty strong pun game in addition to his excellent A Song of Ice and Fire takes. And his Dying of the Light takes. I did some guest spots on his show to talk about George's book, Dying of the Light, which Joe is doing a read-through of. So check that out.
And you have plans to do another episode with him in this break?
That's true. We are going to do a stream together. We've had planned for a while. We're going to try to nail that down soon. Some talk about wildfire dreams relating to Dunk and Eggs. So, and Ares, the first and the second. So that'll be fun when we will announce that when it's time. Also, next week, we'll have our wrap up. As I alluded to at the beginning, our guest will be Stefan Sasa of Boiled Leather Audio Hour, one of the very few A Song of Ice and Fire podcasts in existence that is about the same age as us. Very few have been around as long as we have. They're one of them. There you go. So that's going to be cool. We've done a little bit with Stefan before. I've been on their show as well, so that'll be very cool. And we'll have Sean. You'll be returning next week as well. Is that right?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it. I'm reluctant to finish this up, honestly.
Right, I know it's tough to say goodbye.
I was talking to
I was
Aziz
even thinking
about I was talking to Aziz about World of Ice and Fire and how we wanted to do that with you. We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah.
How much you'll be involved in that, because you'll have an interesting perspective.
I would very much agree with Shea on that. It would be cool to have you on, at least for some of it, if not more than some.
I would love to.
Cool.
I was even thinking, by the way, when we were covering the show, that was, 10 episodes of the show, and we maybe would have one or at the beginning and end, a preview and a wrap up, which is 12, and that's what we just now did. And I guess we're going to have one more next week, but
yeah,
it's good to get all this in.
Yeah, right? It's great. I'm so happy we got to do this, and I appreciate all your great takes. So everybody, we'll be back next week. More thanks need to be issued, though. I'm not done with the thanks. Are you going to grab a cat, Sean?
I
We
shall.
would certainly thank you and the cat for that. Also, thanks to Ashea for managing everything behind the scenes.
I like how you said my name, Ashea.
Ashea! And Nina as well. They got to extend the... When you have an A at the end of your name, you really just have an opportunity to really extend it. Yeah. Thanks to the mods of our Facebook group. You guys are awesome. Thanks to our contributors on our other sites like Flick and Facebook and Slack and Discord, and those people I interact with on Twitter. Y'all are MVPs. We have so much fun chatting about this awesome world, being part of this awesome community. And, well, we're not slowing down. We may have reached another milestone of sorts, but that just means we're on to the next one.
Oh, looks like we've got Toffee. If I can tell, yes. It's coming in. Sean hasn't sat down yet, but she's on screen.
Also, thanks to Joey Townsend and Jesse Koval for the music, and Claridox for the maps, and Michael and Kevin McLeod for the Valar Rereadis music. And if only they knew how they've inspired cats to join. Princess Scania says, one more shout out to the friggin' Italian, sends a super chat. Absolutely. Thank you, Princess Scanius, for that. Friggin' Italian did found the show. He unfortunately did pass years ago, but he he's the reason we're here, so we gotta always remember that. And something caused a shade of laugh during that. It was awkward timing.
Yeah, it was terrible timing, but still,
I guess it was the cat.
Yeah, Sean.
Yeah.
The cat just kind of like slid out of his arms, melted out.
I brought Toph in, and she was being real lovey, but wanted to get out of my arms. But all three of the cats are now surrounding me. If my camera shakes, it's because Jet is
so far it
right up
seems
against
like
the computer.
Jet is the most amenable to being on camera.
To being held in general, yeah.
So, everyone, if you have thoughts for the wrap up, definitely send them our way in any of the different places you can contact us. Feel free to choose the one you like best, and you might get your take read aloud on the show. If not, keep on listening. We'll keep them coming, and keep on reading. You know what I mean. Valar, Rereadis.
And go join Here Be Dragons, talking about why canon matters and why it doesn't.
Yeah, definitely, as usual. Check out our friends Here Be Dragons. I neglected to include them myself, but Ashay's got my back and their back. So yeah, check out Here Be Dragons.
And real quick, Sean now has Makora in his arms. She's so pretty. And so, on that note, I think we can say Valar Rereadis.